emotions. At a time like this, our skill as radio hosts is being tested. To quote Billy Joel, only the good die young. So with that, we lay to rest the sports radio topic of trading Terry McLaurin for TJ Watt. I appreciate all the kind words, DMs, and tweets. We do not have refreshments in the lobby because I ain't paying for y'all to eat, but you may leave. Thank you. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. TJ Watt got paid yesterday. I had a lot of fun, Max, watching Kevin because I believe he was the first one in the market to bring this topic to the masses, taking a lot of calls on it, of the question of should they pay or should they trade Terry for TJ Watt. That is now done. When TJ Watt gets paid, the magnitude that he got paid yesterday by the Pittsburgh Steelers at like 4 p.m., $41 million per year, you ain't paying somebody $41 million a year to go turn around and trade him. So that topic is now done. It is buried. I shed a single thug tear. Just one. Not multiple, just one. I'm happy for TJ Watt. And I feel like now at this point, Terry is next.
Please, God, let that be true.
I feel like Terry is next. This is going to be the subject of our poll question at the Team 980 on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at the Denton Day. Do you think that Terry gets paid before training camp? It's very simple. Two options. Yes, no. I don't want to hear something about midway through. No. Very simple. Do you think that Terry McLaurin is going to get paid before training camp starts? Yes or no? Go vote on that. We will take your calls on that as well at 301-230-0980. Was there ever really a correlation between Terry and TJ Watt? Was a trade ever going to matriculate? No, I don't think that was ever going to happen. Because if you're Pittsburgh, you're not trading away the guy that has been the face of your franchise since the departure of Ben Roethlisberger. I know they went out and they got Aaron Rodgers, but it's 2025. He's not the face of your franchise. This is a one-year situation for Aaron Rodgers. I don't even know how good he's going to be in 2025. Kevin and I felt very differently about the way that he played in 2024. Wasn't bad, but he wasn't good. So with them paying TJ Watt, the next logical thing, at least in my mind, as far as the overall NFL offseason calendar is concerned, would be Washington paying Terry McLaurin. I am expecting that this is going to happen very soon. Not a report. It's a gut feel. I like to kind of swing a little bit emotionally sometimes.
As we all do.
It's a gut feel that Terry's contract is going to get situated soon. Because now feels like the point in time where everyone is talking. TJ Watt in Pittsburgh, well, they clearly are talking. They got that contract done. Terry had said earlier this week at Eastern Motors, in what has now become an infamous press conference, that the two sides weren't talking. My guess is they have now at least begun conversations. Don't know that for a fact, but as we get closer and closer to training camp, there is an urgency that comes with that. Crunch time, as Terry put it earlier this week, but there is an urgency that comes with it because I know they want him in camp. I know he wants to be in camp. He still can be, whether the contract is signed or not, but this is the way that business goes in the NFL. If you want a new contract and you do not have a new contract, you generally tend to sit out at the beginning of training camp. But I am optimistic that something is going to get done prior to training camp starting. And the past week or so, 2.5 weeks, will be put in the rear view mirror, and everyone is going to be happy. And I think I said this to Anthony Armstrong yesterday. It's either Anthony or Jay Gruden. If you missed those conversations, they're available on the Odyssey app and wherever it is that you get your podcasts. My guess is that as soon as Terry signs that contract, they're going to take him to the photo room in the facility. Nice backdrop. I don't know that it'll be the Metro backdrop, that they used for the photo shoots when they unveiled the new uniforms. Well, the new old uniforms. But my guess is as soon as they sign Terry, you are going to see him in that burgundy and gold uniform that we have all grown to very much love. For some of you, you grew up loving that uniform. For others of us, it's just nice to have it back. But my guess is as soon as pen hits paper, that Terry McLaurin is going to be laced up in that new burgundy and gold, the real burgundy and gold.
That picture is going to hit like crack.
It is going to, my soul desperately needs that picture. I mean, maybe he's going to follow suit with what we have seen from now multiple NFL players, not just this offseason, Max, but within the past couple of days and weeks. Maybe he breaks his own news. I will say, so TJ Watt broke his news. He posted on Instagram. It was himself in a jersey. He was flexing. I would assume he had just sacked somebody on the field, right? So he posted on Instagram yesterday when he signed that contract. I then saw Terry McLaurin post a story. Oh, my heart rate spiked a little bit. I was like, yes, here we go.
Something.
Every time that from now until this contract gets signed, I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram. I've actually deleted it off my phone because I scroll it too much. Look at me being healthy and all. But every time I see a Terry McLaurin post on Instagram now, whether it just be a regular post or a story, my expectations as we get closer to training camp are going to be that he is breaking his own news. We have a wonderful amount of beat reporters in town, but it just seems to be the new wave that NFL players are on where they like to break their own news, taking the information in their story into their own hands. I like that, actually. I think they've done a really good job with that. But every time I now see a Terry McLaurin post, this is where my brain goes.
Yeah, same. I clicked expecting to see something of note. And I guess it kind of was. Terry and Tress Way are in a fishing competition.
You know what? That is what it was. It was Terry and Tress, which is, that is positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Tress Way is on the team, right? And like they have a history together. Obviously, they played together for a while. My understanding, I don't know if this is 100% correct, but my understanding is that prior to Jaden Daniels coming here, Terry McLaurin was the favorite player for many, if not all, of Tress Way's children. Because I think I distinctly remember a video a couple of years ago on social media where they like met for the first time, and Tress's kids do what all kids do when they meet someone they really admire, which is they just completely like shrink. You know,
yeah,
it's just what kids do. I did that when I was younger. I'm sure you did that when you were younger. It's just Absolutely. A natural thing. But it is nice to see those two hanging out. You know, that's positive. It's better than negative. I'll take anything that's better than negative right now, at least as it relates to the Terry McLaurin contract situation. I'm still confident. I'm still confident that something is going to get done. Now, this TJ Watt contract, that's a big contract.
Yeah, so I was, when the news broke yesterday, I was like, 123 over 4. That's a lot. And then I did the math and I saw $41 million.
123 over 3 years. He is the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history.
Good for him, man.
I mean, great for him. I don't think that actually impacts anything about Terry other than the fact of laying to rest our favorite topic of would you trade Terry for TJ Watt, which if I remember, the response seemed to be rather split on that discussion. At least in terms of some of the fans that were calling in. I would have taken TJ Watt, but I don't know that TJ Watt, I don't know that I consider him as the best defensive end or the best pass rusher in the league. He's getting paid like it because he's in that class. Like there's very much a tier system with these NFL contracts, which is why the timing for the Terry thing hasn't rubbed me too much the wrong way. He's not in that tier of guys that reset the market. He's not. There's like 3 guys, I think, that can reset the market. A.J. Brown might be the next one. If Philadelphia wants to do another extension with him, it feels like they've already done at least 2 since they traded for him. So I don't know that there's another one of those in the cards. But Terry is not in that upper echelon top tier of receivers with like your Jamar Chases, your Justin Jeffersons. I don't believe that Tyreek Hill is there. anymore, but like your A.J. Brown, C.D. Lambs. So you knew that they being Washington, was never going to reset the market with Terry. And because you're not going to reset the market, that does give the team a little bit more leverage because you don't have to rush it as much. If you plan on resetting the market, like if Pittsburgh signed TJ Watt before Myles Garrett, they would have saved $2 million per year because all you had to do was match or top Max Crosby's number. And if you time that right, maybe you save $4 million, you just give him $37 million. But because they waited and Cleveland didn't, they give Myles Garrett $40 million, and then Cincinnati put Jamar Chase over Myles Garrett. There was this extra amount of pressure for Pittsburgh to then give TJ Watt 40, I think it's 41.2 or something like that. So it's just edging out Jamar Chase. But TJ Watt, he had 19 sacks in 2023. He only had 11 in 17 games, 11 and a half in 17 games in 2024. Only 5.5 in 2022. Now, he was hurt for some of that. And I know, he does some things. He means some things to that roster outside of just what he does in terms of the sack numbers. Again, he is like this face of the franchise kind of a deal. They're similar to that of Terry McLaurin. But I think the leverage is still very much with Adam Peters. And this is kind of fun for somebody like me that at least is taking this lens of trying to figure out how Adam Peters operates. Like, I'm fascinated with the idea of being an NFL general manager and being one who has learned from what they do in San Francisco, who has learned from what they did in Denver when Denver was at a point of success, learned from what they did in New England when New England was at a point of success. New England is very different from like San Francisco in this particular comparison because Bill Belichick doesn't care about anybody's thoughts, feelings, or opinions. He will cut anybody. It doesn't matter. I remember distinctly he was cutting Lawyer Malloy, who was like one of the best safeties in the league during their early Super Bowl runs, and he just did it like it was nothing. I don't think Adam Peters is going to be that reckless, so to speak, or that cold-hearted. But San Francisco always had this tendency to wait. They were never first out of the gate when it came to paying guys, but they always paid their guys. So that's one of the main reasons I feel pretty good about this. The waiting game sucks because you want this deal to be done as soon as possible. It would have been great if Terry was a full participant in mini camps, but San Francisco always pays their guys. So I'm not too worried about the timing thing. I do just want it to be done as soon as training camp begins, because once you start to miss training camp, and my guess is that Terry would hold out, not hold in, just based off of how minicamp went. Listening back to some of the press conference stuff, he made it seem like he had to leave. He didn't have to. That was a conversation with him and his representations, and that was the decision that they came to. But it wasn't like I have to leave. It was I'm deciding to leave because I feel like leaving would benefit me in terms of what I'm trying to achieve here. Once you start missing days of training camp, then you'll see a little bit of movement in the panic meter. Not a lot, but a little bit. If you don't get something done by the end of training camp, then that thing is going to be skyrocketed and all over the place. But it is important to remind everyone they have done this before here with Sam Cosmi last offseason. This whole Adam Peters regime was very, very new to us here. And Sam Cosmi was a really, really good player, still is a really good player. Not quite viewed in the same lens as Terry McLaurin, although it was very clear that Sam Cosmi was on a trajectory to be very, very good and, solidifying that right guard position. But they paid him in September. Sam did all of the training camp last year, all of the mini camp. He didn't have a fifth-year option. We started to think, if I remember correctly, and maybe take some calls on being concerned that Sam Cosmi would be Brandon Sheriff 2.0, where you get into this franchise tag thing, and then after a year or two with the franchise tag, you're just both sides are so upset at one another that they go their separate ways. Sam didn't do that. He signed his contract in September. He's going to be here for the long term, right? I would prefer they sign Terry before September, but we do have that one data point of knowing that they are going to pay their guys. They kept Bobby Wagner this offseason, didn't have to. They kept him. They kept Zach Ertz this offseason. Didn't have to. They kept him. Those are two guys that the coaching staff, the front office has been very, very vocal about being commanders, right? How many times have we heard that over the last year and change about we want commanders and the people that match the culture and the energy that we expect to bring? Terry is that guy. That's one of the things. Like, I don't think that this front office is a bunch of hypocrites. I do not. So because they have preached about being a commander and Terry is that prototypical commander, I am still confident that a deal ultimately gets done. It's just a question of what the numbers are going to look like. Does he get over $30 million? Does he get more than $30 million? How many years are it? What are the guarantees? This is going to be Terry's last big contract. Second extension rather, but third contract in the NFL. Most great NFL players, you might get, if you're a truly elite of the elite, you might get a fourth big contract, but like that's for quarterbacks only. Most players get three really big contracts, so I don't fault him for trying to squeeze as much out of it as possible, especially when you consider that this organization has the cap space to be able to handle the kind of money that Terry is asking for. In terms of the number itself, Ian Rapoport has done some really good reporting on that. You will hear what he said about that number, and we will start to take your calls. So line up on the phones at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you think that Terry McLaurin signs his extension prior to the beginning of training camp? It's our poll question as well at the Team 980 on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at the Denton Day. I am Denton Day, sitting in for Kevin Sheehan on the Kevin Sheehan Show. We talk numbers on the Terry contract next. Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980 at the Denton Day on Twitter. Our poll question of the day is available at the Team 980. Do you believe that Terry McLaurin is going to sign his extension before training camp? Go vote on that. You can line up on the phones as well at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980, and you can answer that question. We're also available on YouTube. You can watch us every single day, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time on the Team 980's YouTube page. Retweet there. Subscribe there, rather. Retweet us. We're on Twitter, too. And I do look at the chat, apparently more than Kevin does. So I do look at the chat. Yesterday, we had Anthony Armstrong on. Anthony Armstrong is one half of the Believe in Commanders podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. His co-host is the mighty Scott Jackson. They had Ian Rapoport on yesterday, and Rapoport reported earlier in the week that Terry McLaurin was looking for $30 million per year, which is much smaller of a number than I thought he was looking for. I thought Terry was looking in the neighborhood of $31 to $32 million a year. So 30 is very, very different, especially over the course of 3, potentially 4 years. Rapoport was on with Scott Jackson on the Believe Podcast Network. Scott asked him about this. Here's what Rapoport said about the Terry McLaurin contract.
Well, I think it's really just they just have not agreed on value yet. I think it's both sides are clear that they want to be there together. They want to, see this through for many more years to come. Third contracts are tough, right? I mean, he's obviously older. You look at, let's say, like Garrett Wilson, like, all right, Garrett Wilson's getting 32 and a half a year. That's a great deal. Maybe that's something that could help Terry McLaurin. And I think it definitely helped him, as far as like making the case. Terry McLaurin's a lot older. These are not, apples to apples. I'm sure he's going to want over $30 million. A lot of the really good receivers are sort of, using that benchmark now. We'll see if he gets there. I do believe it's something that will get done, because when you have two sides that want to move forward together, a lot of times you figure out a way to get the deal done. I just know they aren't quite there just yet.
So Rapoport says that both sides want to get the deal done. I am a little confused by one of the things that he mentioned. He just said, I'm sure that he wants over $30 million. I heard that correctly, right? My ears are not playing tricks
that's
on
not
me.
a report. That's a
That's
a gut thing.
But he had said earlier this week that he wants $30 million. So that has either changed or, like, I'm trying to connect the dots here. If I'm looking too deep into things, my sincerest apologies. I know that, doing this job, you might stumble across words from time to time. But he said he wants $30 million on Monday. And then yesterday with Scott, he said I'm sure he wants over $30 million. That is a crucial bit of information, right? Like, that is a very crucial bit of information.
Two very different numbers.
Very different numbers that could, in turn, be very different in the long term, especially when you're talking about value. I would sign Terry McLaurin to a 3-year, $96 million contract. That gets him at about $32 million per year. You can front load the contract, so at the end of that contract, you're paying significantly less. And if you are worried about some sort of statistical drop-off, it's much more comfortable when you're paying less at the end of the contract, to where you can say, all right, look, like this is happening. We need to figure out a situation here. But at least now he is in the prime of his career. I don't think most 30-year-olds completely fall off a cliff at wide receiver. Is there some sort of drop-off? Certainly. Is it fair to expect that Terry is going to catch 15 touchdowns in 2025? I would say no. I don't think there are very many receivers that consistently stack upwards of 12 to 13 to 14 touchdowns on a consecutive basis or any kind of regular basis in the NFL. But if he still has 7, 8, 9, 10, that's still good at 30 years old. And you can still argue that, 85 catches, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, that's worthy of being a number one wide receiver. And number one wide receivers are worthy of over $30 million per year in today's day and age in the NFL. Plus, on top of that, in a couple of years, by the time the end of this contract comes to be, and you obviously you're going to start getting ready to pay Jane Daniels, but that $32 million or whatever it is on the back end is not going to be anywhere near as expensive as it is today. We've seen this time in and time again with almost every single position that gets paid in the NFL. We have multiple defensive ends getting paid over $35 million in the NFL. That was unthinkable like 3 years ago. We got multiple receivers getting paid over $30 million. That was unthinkable. I think it's almost 10 wide receivers that are getting paid north of $30 million per year. That was unthinkable a couple of years ago. Jane Daniels might get paid $70 million in his contract, depending on how the next couple of years go. So the market is always going to be changing. And because the NFL is the king of maximizing funds, they're a billion-dollar enterprise that continues to steamroll over just about everyone who is in their path. $30 million, $31 million in 2027 is not going to be anywhere near as steep as it is in 2025. And it's not even all that steep in 2025. So you can jump in on the phone lines at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you believe that Terry is going to get his contract extension prior to the start of training camp? This is our poll question on the Team 980, at the Team 980 on Twitter. 70%, it's early, but 70% of people that have voted on this poll question have said that yes, the deal is going to get done. 30% have said no, they do not think a deal is going to get done by the time training camp starts. I'd be very curious to hear from those that say no. Why is it that you say no? What do you think is the holdup in this deal not taking place in the next 9 days? It's a little over a week before they report to camp for the first time. Why is it that you do not think that this deal is going to get done? I want to hear from those people in particular. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. Our phone lines are open at 301-230-0980. We're also available in the YouTube chat. You can watch us on YouTube daily, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern time here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. I'm Denton Day sitting in for Kevin Sheehan. I'm still optimistic that Terry is going to get paid prior to training camp. I think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be smiling. He'll probably show up to the press conference, because we always do a press conference after these things. He's going to show up to the press conference in a nice burgundy suit. I know we got one of those things in the closet. Hopefully not the way that like Carson Wentz did all those years ago, but I know Terry got a burgundy suit in the closet. He's going to show up. It's going to be all smiles. I want to be here. They wanted me here. It's nice to feel wanted. Let's go out on the field. That's my projection of how that press conference is going to end up going. All right. So let's hit the phones. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you think that Terry McLaurin gets paid before training camp starts? Let's go to Eric in Norfolk. Eric, what's going on?
Denton. So, yeah, I don't know if he gets signed per se before training camp starts, but I do think the timeline has moved up. And one of the big reasons for that is Trey Amos getting signed last night. And I think that was probably a larger priority for them at the moment, just because, rookies report today. They want to get all their rookies signed and kind of up to speed as quick as possible. And so now that that's happening, I think the communications and chess pieces are going to start moving around a little bit quicker. And, to reiterate something I said earlier in the week, we want to get the communication open. I'm not as worried about the contract being signed today or by Monday or Tuesday. It's getting the communication open and getting to a good place where maybe Terry does hold in, and just shows up and is part of the meetings and get the conversations kind of going.
Yeah, that's a great call, Eric. I'm with you on the communication. I think now is the time where the communication opens. When Terry said that they had not talked in a month, it was very easy to take that sound clip and sprint with it, not run with it, and sprint with it as if it is this absolute nuke. It's a knock on the organization, and they're just phasing him out. Generally speaking, I don't think there's a lot of conversations going on around the end of June and the early portion of July. It's kind of the off time. You don't get a lot of off time in the NFL during the off season, but it's kind of like a 5-6 week period where almost everybody is on some form of vacation. They're away. I mean, did you notice, Max? Maybe I'm the only one that picked up on this. when they put together that Art Monk video, it was very, very well done. The Commanders social team over the last 2 years has been on fire, by the way.
Yeah, whoever they
crush it.
hired has been just crushing it out of the park.
On
every time.
fire. But did you notice that both Adam Peters and Dan Quinn seemed like they were on vacation? They were in area. They didn't go down to Florida. Josh Harris did, but they didn't go down to Florida. It felt like Dan Quinn it looked like he was sitting somewhere where a pool is in his backyard. And I know there are pools in people's backyards in Northern Virginia, but that felt like it was a I'm not here kind of a deal. People are just off. Like they go away for a little bit, and it is some element of recharging the batteries. So it didn't bother me that they had not spoken in a month. It is way worse to me if they were speaking and a deal wasn't done. If they had open dialogue for that entire month and they still weren't coming to any sort of deal, that would be terrifying, because it means that there's something really going on that is limiting the progression of the deal. They're just not talking. They're not talking. So I do wonder how they felt about that internally, about him coming out there and saying that. I do wonder if that was the plan. If they said, hey, we are not going to talk for X amount of weeks. We're going to do our stuff, handle our stuff. Guys are going to be on vacation. We're going to be out of town. It's a big holiday. I mean, even Terry was on vacation for a certain part of that. Now, he's not sitting in these discussion rooms. This is why he hires representation, agents, PR, whoever it is. He's not sitting in a meeting room with Adam Peters hearing all these conversations, but guys just go on vacation. So I didn't really have all that big of a deal with him saying they haven't spoken in a month. That didn't strike anywhere near as negative of a chord with me as it did or seemingly did with others. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you believe that Terry McLaurin is going to get signed prior to training camp? Let's go to Tony in DC. Tony, what's going on?
Man, I just want to say, we're like a bunch of little bad kids, man. It's been so long since we had an organization that did things the right way. They got us one game for the Super Bowl, and we dare sit around and question if they know what they're doing. And then we say things like this organization as if we're still talking about the last regime. If they decided to move on from Terry, I trust the process, bro, because these guys are pitted to know what they're doing. I don't know too many teams that have signed high-dollar wide receivers and because of that won a Super Bowl. So Terry is under contract. Terry's going to show up and play.
Yeah.
Now, if he balls out again, all right, then we go ahead and pay him. But you got to remember, this dude's almost 31 years old. See, we're falling in love with Terry being a great guy. Here we go. We're trying to sign Boy Scouts again. We want the nicest guys on the field. We love him. Let's pay him. He's 31 years old. We got to make business decisions and stop being so attached.
Well, he's not quite 31. He turns 30 in September. So he's 29
for 30
now.
Years, for 30 years, we've been doing it the other way. Now we got another regime that's doing it the other way that looks good, and we're questioning it. Doesn't make sense.
Now, I agree with you in this stance, Tony. That's a great call. I agree with you in this stance. It is hypocritical for us to trust Adam Peters and bang the drum, let Adam cook, all of these things last year, and then immediately turn our back on him this year. I do not subscribe to that, so I am with you in that regard. Why this would bother me a little bit with the Terry thing is that I am of the belief that Terry still has good football left in him. I am of the belief that he still has at least 3 good seasons left in him, and I would like those 3 good seasons to be here. If they move on from Terry, which at this point they're not going to do, at least this year, he is going to play this year. Bar none. He's going to play this year. It's too late to trade him for any sort of real value. If you really thought that a deal was not going to get done and you wanted to explore the avenues of a trade, you do that in May at the NFL draft, because his value at that point would be sky high. The highest it would be probably ever, because you'd be able to squeeze a first-round pick out of somebody for a guy like Terry McLaurin. Teams need good wide receivers. He's a good wide receiver. The first round, especially in the later portion of the first round, is a little bit of a hodgepodge, if you will. You think you're getting a good player, but sometimes you don't really know. That's happened to this organization. How many people thought Josh Doxson was going to be a killer? He wasn't. I mean, he killed our team internally, but he wasn't a killer on the field, right? So that is when the value for Terry would have been the best. He's going to play here in Washington in 2025. I just want them to sign him because I still think there's good football to squeeze out of Terry McLaurin. But I'm not turning my back on Adam Peters. So I agree with you, Tony, in that specific regard. I'm not turning my back on Adam Peters based off of how this has transpired. This is part of the business of football. Things we had to know. We had to know that things were not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. That there was going to be some hard times to get over. This is one of them. I ultimately still think the deal is going to get done, but this is just learning about how Adam Peters operates and what to expect for years, decades, hopefully, to come. I hope this is Adam Peters' last job in the NFL. Things are going really, really well if it's his last job in the NFL. I hope it's his last job in the NFL and he takes this job until he's like 65 or 70 and says, you know what? I'm going to go like travel the world now. I hope this is his last job. This is just the first like real sign of not adverse. It's a tough decision. It's a tough decision that you're going to have to make. How much do we pay him? Do we pay him? All of that. You just got to figure out and see how he operates. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you believe that the Terry McLaurin extension is going to happen before training camp? I'll take more of your calls. You can vote on our poll question as well at the team 980. I'm Denton Day sitting in for Kevin Sheehan. Don't go anywhere.
All right, here's what's trending on this Friday, July 18th. Lloyd Howell is out as the executive director of the NFL Players Association. This is coming amid scrutiny regarding a collusion case, as well as Howell's part-time consulting position at the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm approved to seek minority ownership of NFL teams. And TJ Watt has reached a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in football. He has signed a 3-year extension worth up to $123 million with 108 fully guaranteed at signing. Mike Williams, he is retiring. He's closing the book on an 8-year NFL career. Williams was looking to make his return to the Chargers roster after a disappointing final 2 years in both LA, New York, and Pittsburgh. He was working through an injury at Chargers camp and was placed on the PUP list before training camp. Like I said, closing the book on an 8-year career. Dame Lillard is returning to the Portland Trailblazers after being waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. Dame signs a 3-year, $42 million contract and is set to make $141 million over the next 2 seasons. And after almost 2 weeks, baseball is back in the nation's capital. The Nats return home tonight from the All-Star break to take on the San Diego Padres. Michael Soroka likely to get the start against Dylan Cease. First pitch at 6:45. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type of the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. Adam Epstein is going to join us in 15 minutes here on the show. Real quickly, we'll get back to Terry. Take some of your phone calls at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Max in the update, the trending now, mentioning that Mike Williams is retiring. Mike Williams was an unbelievable wide receiver at Clemson. Hurt like hell in all of his years in Los Angeles. He did play relatively well last year for Pittsburgh. He caught one touchdown in 2024.
Hey, and you know who that was against?
One touchdown, and it was that touchdown.
It was the
2 minutes and 22 seconds. Beat Benjamin St. Just.
Who's already getting burned in practice, by the way.
Maybe, shocker,
Yeah.
Maybe the best throw of the season for Russell Wilson, and it beat the Commanders. That was a tough game, man. The Commanders left at least 14 points on the field.
Hurt like hell.
It was one of the only games where it felt like Jaden actually missed multiple throws. They left at least 14 points on the field, and they lost by one. So I hope Mike Evans finds happiness. Just know, at least for a week, he robbed it from me, although the Commanders ended up being fine. All right, getting back to the phone lines here at 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Do you believe that Terry McLaurin is going to sign his contract extension before the start of training camp? This is a poll question as well. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheDentonDay. You can find our poll question on Twitter at @TheTeam980. 73% of people say yes, that Terry is going to get a deal done before training camp. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Dan? How you doing? Yeah, I was asking the screen caller. I think that the training camp starts on Wednesday, right? Or Thursday?
I think it's Thursday. I have the schedule up.
I think it'll get done. I think it'll get done by Tuesday. And here's the reason why. I think they were severely distracted for the last couple of weeks with the Trey Amos situation. Now that Trey Amos has been took care of him yesterday to be exact. I think now that they can turn all their attentions on Terry, and I think they can get everything done. I think Terry will be probably at Ashburn probably by Sunday, because his agent will call him and say they're in the conversation. We're talking. We just we got a deal done. We just got to get everything passed out and stuff. And I'll probably think they'll get everything done by Tuesday. And the reason is because you don't want no distractions coming in. And I know a lot of people say, well, Terry doesn't need a distraction. Well, see, here's the bigger difference now. You got Deebo Samuel now. Terry has to learn how to play with Deebo. Terry has to learn how to play with Jalen Lane. So, in a sense, you do have to get him in there so he could kind of work on everything and try to get everything to work the way you want it to. And I think it'll get done no later than Tuesday.
I hope you're right, Mark. I appreciate the call, as always. There is already, I think, if he gets it done on Tuesday, you get a press conference on Wednesday, I would think, or maybe they just knock the whole thing out and they do a press conference as soon as they sign it. He's already there. Tuesday would be fine, I think. I do think they want to get the press conference done and the deal done before they actually start training camp. I pulled up the wrong date there, so I'll get that in a second. Rick is in Lutherville. Rick, what's going on?
Hey, Denton, how are you? I don't think it will be done before training camp, and I think he'll be a hold-in versus a hold-out. And I do think it's a really tricky situation with Terry. Everybody loves Terry. Heck, I think he's practically saved the franchise in some ways over the last 4 or 5 years. But the dilemma is as follows, and you're a stat guy. I'm a stat guy. I don't have all the stats in front of me, but I heard a run of stats 10 days ago that said he was like 19th in yards, 23rd in one other category, and I don't think he's in the top 10. I put him somewhere around 13th, 14th, 15th in the receiver numbers. And I just don't think – I think one of the dilemmas is the length of term. No, it should never be a 4-year. And the other side of the fence is I don't think he should earn a contract with a 3 in front of it. I'd pay him 28, 29. That would be a 85% increase on his pay. And not many employers will give you an 85% increase on your salary. So it's a double whammy, but I think it'll be a hold in versus a holdout.
Let me ask you this, Rick, before I let you go. Do you believe that Terry is better than T. Higgins?
No.
Okay, then what you are saying is fair. I would slightly disagree, but I wanted to ask that question because if you do think that Terry is better than T. Higgins, you got to pay more than 28. T. Higgins is getting 28 in Cincinnati as the definitive number 2 there. Terry is not a definitive number 2 here. He is definitively the number 1 guy. Debo, we have high hopes for, but we don't know exactly how that's going to pan out. So if you think he's worse than T. Higgins, I would disagree with that. But if you think he's worse than T. Higgins, you can pay him less than T. Higgins. If you think he's better than T. Higgins, you got to pay him a little bit more than T. Higgins. So I think that Terry is going to get 30. If you have a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL in 2025 and you are negotiating a contract, you're going to give him at least $30 million. That feels like the floor. Brandon Ayuk got $30 million last year. Brandon Ayuk is a really good player. I think you can make an argument that Terry McLaurin is better than Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk is younger, but Terry McLaurin is better than Brandon Ayuk. I would feel very comfortable making that argument. I think Ayuk runs really great routes, but we've never seen him as the definitive number 1 guy absolutely just destroy. He always had that luxury of playing next to Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. He played in loaded offenses. You've seen a lot of man-v-man coverages. We watched Terry McLaurin at the end of last year because there was no other real weapons on this offense. You get bracketed by everybody. That's why he had that stretch, specifically that game against Atlanta, where he was pretty much a non-factor. Now, Jaden won the damn thing. Zacchaeus had a great game that particular outing. Zach Ertz caught the game-winning touchdown. It was an epic game from Jaden and everybody else, but Terry was bracketed the entire time. I think playing alongside Debo is going to give him a little bit of relief, and I do think that needs to be factored into this. If you think, I believe that Terry still has good years left in him. On top of that, he has a quarterback that we know is a dude in Jaden Daniels. On top of that, you added weapons like a Debo Samuel that open up the field a little bit, and it's going to make Terry's life a little bit easier. So I still think you can squeeze out a couple of good years out of Terry McLaurin. Josh is in Columbia. Josh, you're on the Team 980.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to say that there is a high possibility that I believe the deal will get done before training camp. But in my mind, I feel like we're at this point where we're at a standstill that it's kind of hard to see what will really change. All right. You know what I mean? So it's like, who's really going to, take the loss here? You know what I mean? Is it going to be the team where it's like, okay, we'll pay you what you want, Terry? Or is Terry going to be like, you know what? I'll lose a couple mil just to be on this team. Now, I feel like if the distraction gets so heavy at the first 2 days of training camp, it's like, hey, Terry's not here, and they're constantly getting those questions, then I feel like they'll get a little bit more pressure to feel like they have to get something done quicker. There has to be a point where the news becomes almost like a distraction to the team, where I feel like it will get something done quicker. But until that point comes, I really don't see anything changing anytime soon. But I just want to say Jaden Daniels also, he's having the Peyton Manning effect. This guy's amazing. You know what I mean? So I can understand why the team, why the team is kind of taking their time with signing Terry, because Jaden Daniels is that good. He's that good. So thank you for taking my call. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it, Josh. So there's one thing that I'm going to push back on. I do not want my front office to be influenced by headlines. Been there, done that. That was, if I could describe the Ron Rivera experience in 4 years and everybody that was associated with Ron Rivera, it felt like they were way too influenced by headlines. They wanted to win the PR, which was why listening to Ron speak on a daily basis was like nails on a chalkboard. If you listen to Ron speak once, you might enjoy what he says. He seems like a very nice man, charismatic to an extent. When you listen to him every day, it's just back and forth and back and forth. And the issue with trying to win the narrative and win the PR, like what Josh had kind of just alluded to, it's not exactly what he said, but I just want to make sure that I'm saying this. I don't want the people that are in charge to care what we say on the radio, what the headlines are in the paper, on social media, blogs, podcasters, whatever. That should not factor a ton into their decision making. They understand what Terry represents to this fan base. They're not going to pull a Nico Harrison who traded Luka Doncic in the NBA and then got in front of a microphone and said, I didn't know the people liked him that much. Hey, genius, open your eyes up a little bit. The powers that be here understand the feeling of the fan base, but I don't want them to be shifted in terms of how they approach the way they build a team and just their fundamental principles by the pressure of the media by saying this needs to get done. They know that. They're going to operate accordingly to what they are believing internally. This is still a multi-year process. You know, I know Adam Peters has said that they want to win. Dan Quinn never said it was a rebuild. He said it was a recalibration. This is a multi-year process of building a sustained winner. Signing Terry, at least in the short term, is beneficial to that goal. That is why I want him to be signed. He's beneficial to that goal. But this is a long-term thing that they got to take in a lot of different factors into consideration. This is why they hired all the dorks in the front office, the analytic people. I have always been a firm believer that there needs to be a balance between analytic and stuff that actually, like the feel of the game, the emotion of the game. Football is emotional. We're not playing this damn thing on calculators. So, like, there needs to be a balance of that. And I think this organization and this front office, at least right now, has a good balance of that. One more call before we get to AWOD at 11. Let's go to Bones in Southeast. Bones, what's going on?
Hey, my main man, thanks for taking my call. Shout out to Matt.
Yep.
You know, I really have no idea. I wish they would get it done before training camp. But my thing is, right, I'm glad that you hear all the people, man, that, you know, really speaking against Terry, man, talking about Terry not this and Terry not that, and they shouldn't do this and Terry. I'm really, really glad that I can hear this, man, because that lets me know we still got these fair weather fans around here, right? But as soon as they sign Terry, you understand, it's going to be war. Jaden Daniels, Debo Samuels, Terry McLaurin, Gallup, and all the rest of them. Thanks for taking my call, man. I love y'all guys, man. Peace, man.
Yeah, Bones, appreciate it. Coming up next, we'll talk with Adam Epstein, the host of AWOD Radio, weekends on 106.7 The Fan and down in Richmond on 910 The Fan. Does he believe that Terry McLaurin signs his contract prior to training camp? That conversation is next. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dent Day, sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. It's Kevin Sheehan show on the Team 980. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. If you have not already, go vote on our poll question at the Team 980 on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at the Denton Day. Do you believe that Terry McLaurin is going to get paid before training camp starts? Right now is very much in favor of yes. 74% of the voters are saying yes, that Terry McLaurin is going to get paid before training camp. I align with the voters. What does Adam Epstein think? We will bring him on. AWOD Radio is good enough to jump on with us. AWOD, my friend, always great to talk to you. I will ask you the question that I've asked many of our callers and our poll question. Do you believe that Terry McLaurin is going to get paid prior to training camp?
Denton, how are you? Thanks for having me on. It's a very interesting question to start with because I don't think I can say yes the way you're phrasing the question. Will he be there before the start of training camp? I don't know. Will he be there before the pads get on? I feel pretty good about that. So I'm looking at like July, I think it's 27th is the date that I am believing he will be in the building, ready to go. But to be honest with you, I mean, when I heard Terry McLaurin speak, I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry for him as a fan, cry for him as a guy that I root for, cry for him because he was a guy that was like crying to say, I want to get paid, and damn it, he deserves to get paid. But the situation is that Adam Peters wasn't here when he did all of that stuff with all these bad quarterbacks. And Adam Peters is a businessman, and this is a business. And so I think this is a situation where it's coming out that the Commanders want 2 years. He wants 4 years. Might have to meet in the middle at 3. But I'm kind of predicting 2 years, $70 million is what I think is going to happen here. I think they're going to have to give him an extra $1 million or $2 million, give him above a number that we just saw Garrett Wilson get, right? Terry McLaurin's better than Garrett Wilson. I'll say Terry McLaurin's better than Amon-Ra St. Brown. That pissed me off when other people said he wasn't as good as him. He beat him head-to-head, right? Just like Jaden Daniels beat Jared Goff. That's what matters to me, the head-to-head. So I think Terry will get paid. I think it'll be another couple days, and I'm starting to believe it'll be 2 years, $70 million, maybe even 71 or 72 million.
So you'd give him 35 a year
if it'll keep him here in Washington. Yeah.
What was the thought from the Richmond area on the Eastern Motors press conference? I was not the biggest fan. I think the PR kind of left him out to dry. It was about 25 minutes too long. It should have been 10 minutes in and out, and it wasn't. Terry kind of got weird at the end. Body language, not great. I wouldn't be either. 35, like I can't go 35 minutes without a break. He went 35 minutes without a break. What did you guys think down in Richmond in watching that presser?
I mean, we felt like this was a guy that said everything you can say without saying demanding a trade, right? I mean, he came as close to that line, he came as close to the edge without crossing it. You know, he kept doubling down and saying how much he wants to be here, but also how much he wants to play for a team that respects him. And he still feels like he has more to give. And so that's what was so depressing from my perspective was it was a guy who was kind of talking in circles because he was asked to. And it wasn't really by reporters. To me, this was a move by his agent. And I think his agent won. And I think Terry won because now you're hearing everybody say, you got to pay that man. If you're not on Team Terry's side here, I don't understand what you're looking at with this situation. This man's done everything for this franchise on the field and off the field. You have to be Team Terry in this situation.
I thought that so I'm definitely on Team Terry. I thought that presser was just a disaster at the end. It should have been 10 minutes because he wants to be here. I firmly agree with you there. He wants to be here. I'm of the belief that they want him here. I just don't know what the holdup is at this point. But my thought is that they are going to start the conversations to really pick up contract-wise now. And I'm okay with that. I think they're going to start to pick up now, and I hope that they do. I want him to be in here training camp-wise. I want to ask you about Deebo Samuel. We found out yesterday 8% body fat. People were calling him fat. 8% body fat. How excited are you to see Deebo in this offense?
I mean, the most excited I've been for a wide receiver that came to Washington since Pierre Garçon, and I was obsessed with Pierre Garçon in the burgundy and gold. That's how excited I am. It's the most excited I've been for a wide receiver in probably 10 years, maybe longer. I mean, I got to look back to when Pierre Garçon got here, but that's what I think Deebo Samuel can bring is, when Pierre Garçon got here, it was, hey, he was a 1B. Can he be a 1A? And so Deebo Samuel, he was a 1A. Can he be a 1B? right? Can he be a guy that is a 1,000-yard receiver, 8 touchdowns, 1,000 yards all-purpose because maybe you give him the ball on the ground every once in a while in a game. I would love to see him, tote the rock in the red zone and see what he can do there, and maybe some kind of a trick play element there. But this is the most excited I've been for a receiver in a long time. I love people calling him fat. I think it's bulletin board material. I think he's not reading it, but it's getting back to him. The guys like Terrell Owens are calling him fat. All right, T.O., you look great. All right, good for you. But I believe in Deebo Samuel. And so there's all these elements that I think are going to help him have a good season because there's so many things to play for. It's not just a contract season, right? It's not just a contract season. It's like a payback season for everyone that called you fat. And he's ring chasing. So is Von Miller. And you know what? If you want to ring chase in DC, that is totally okay with me.
T.O. calling him fat is absurd. You would think that one wide receiver wouldn't come for another. Like, not everyone's doing sit-ups in the driveway when they get suspended.
Well, that's the thing. T.O. could call 99.9% of America fat because nobody matches his body weight.
Right. I mean, that guy's, he's chiseled. Von Miller, fill in the blank here, Awad. Von Miller will have how many sacks in 2025?
6. And I'm okay with that. 6 sacks, 15, 20 tackles. But here's my take is Von Miller will have 2 or 3 massive plays. And they might not even really show up in the stat sheet because it might be a quarterback hurry. And they release it quick, and all of a sudden, Mikey Sanderson jumps a pass. Or maybe it's a play in which he makes contact with the quarterback, and he throws a lollipop pass. Or it's a strip sack. Or it's just a fumble recovery or something. I think he's going to make 3 or 4 big plays, and I'm predicting one of them will be a game in which we're down by 3 with the game on the line, and the defense needs a massive play. Because this is the guy that we didn't have last year when we needed that. This is the guy that when you're down and it's 3rd and 10, and everybody on the planet knows they're going to throw the ball to Mike Evans, they're going to throw the ball to A.J. Brown. Well, now we have a guy that's going to hurry Jalen Hurts. And I've been saying that for years. We needed this. And so this is, even though, he might be on the last few years of his career, so is Bobby Wagner, so is Zach Ertz, so is Austin Eckler. Dan Quinn knows how to manage veterans better than any coach around.
I'm excited because I think he's going to teach the young guys a bunch. So like pairing up with the young guys, I think is going to be something really, really beneficial. How excited are you when you got the news that Trey Amos signed?
Very excited because I was starting to believe that was not going to happen. I don't understand why it's not being talked about more. That for a while, 30 of 32 second-round picks remained unsigned. And there's been a flurry of signings the last few days, and I felt like half of them were yesterday after my show ended. They just all signed. And so it feels like it should have been a bigger story, but it's great news for the Commanders. I'm surprised it happened. I kind of thought this was going to be every single player getting together and saying, we're all not going to sign until we get that guaranteed deal.
Back to the Von Miller thing. How much did you enjoy? We talked about this yesterday on the show. Him posting in the burgundy and gold, not the cranberry red, in the burgundy and gold.
It was cool. I mean, I think it was cool that he kind of announced it himself, right? Like his Instagram post probably beat out Adam Schefter's tweet. He is enough of a veteran that he can break his own news, right? He doesn't need to tell an agent. He doesn't need to tell some reporter. And so I got fired up. I mean, I really did. And I do believe that he can come here and yes, he can teach the other guys, but I think he's going to make impactful plays. I really do. I looked at what he did in Buffalo, and I don't think we gave him enough credit at times. He was like the defense needed a killer, and he was the killer. And so hopefully that's what he can bring here to Washington.
I mean, the Von Miller posting his own signing has got my heart rate spiking every time I see a Terry McLaurin story on Instagram, thinking that it's going to be him breaking this contract news. Adam Epstein with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. He is the host of AWadd Radio in 910 The Fan in Richmond, and Saturdays on 106.7 The Fan right here in DC from 9 to noon. Is there anything that you were concerned about heading into 2025?
Yeah, a bunch of things. I'm still concerned about a few things. I mean, this is a difficult schedule. There's a lot of prime time games. I did a weird bit on my show. I gave you 50 reasons 50 days away from the start of kickoff, the Commanders would make it back in the playoffs. 50 reasons. One of them was because I knew we would get another edge rusher in the building before September 7th with Von Miller. But part of my take is we're going to have to go above 500 in primetime games. And we're going to have to we have so many of them. We cannot have a losing record in primetime games. We're going to have to go, I think we're going to have to go undefeated. Denton, write this down. Undefeated in those throwback uniforms. They're going to have to be the special sauce for this team this year. And believe it's Seattle, Denver, and Christmas against the Cowboys. We got to go undefeated in those games to make the playoffs. So I have a lot of concerns about the schedule. But in terms of the roster, I do feel a lot better. I need us to stay healthy because, everybody's starting to say this is an older roster. Yes, they are. I think Dan Quinn can manage veterans well. He's done that in Atlanta. He did that in Dallas. So he's doing it here. But they're going to have to stay healthy. That's an element of surprise that we can't really control.
I like the going unbeaten in the alternates. One, I just think it would be great because I like seeing them win in burgundy and gold, but it also seems feasible. So I'm totally with you on that. How many touchdowns does Jaden Daniels throw in 2025?
What did he throw last year? Do you know that number?
Let me pull this up.
I would say he would throw. I'm going to say he'll throw 17 touchdowns this year. I'm guaranteeing he's throwing for 4,000 yards. I think he would have had 4,000 yards if we hadn't sat him against the Cowboys, sat him against the Browns, and if he hadn't gotten hurt against the Panthers. Like, that's 3 games there. He could have had another 150, 200 yards. So I think he's a 4,000-yard passer, and I'll say 17 touchdowns.
Because he was 3,500 last year with 25 touchdowns and 9 picks.
Okay. Yeah, I think the touchdown numbers are down, but the passing yards are up. I think Debo's going to get in the end zone on the ground. B-Rob's going to get in the end zone on the ground. I mean, if everything goes right for Washington, he should throw less touchdown passes because the problem was we couldn't run the damn ball into the end zone. It was so frustrating. We couldn't run into the end zone. It was like Cliff Kingsbury gave up on it. That's why he went to Adam Peters and said, I want a right tackle. They want to be able to run the ball into the end zone. So Jaden Daniels should have less touchdown passes if we can actually move the trenches with this O-line.
Are you more confident in this group of running backs this year now that the offensive line has been addressed?
Yes. Laramie Tunsil is going to make, I think, a big difference in the rushing attack with hopefully Brandon Coleman. Biotis, I'm a big fan of his. I do think he's getting better and better, maybe, hitting his prime here in Washington. So, I'm hopeful because that's the issue. You upgraded almost everything except for the running back room. So the only way the running back room is better is if the hogs in front of them are able to push the pile. And I think Adam Peters did the best he could at that. When you trade for a guy, you draft a guy, and you already had your guy from last year that you're going to move inside.
All right, A-Watt, I'll get you out of here on this. So you believe that Terry is going to be playing for this team in 2025. Do you believe that he has another all-pro caliber season?
No. I mean, I think he'll be really, really good. But the wide receivers in this conference are amazing, right?
Stacked.
And that's an issue right there. And that's why they don't want to give him more than 3 years is because he could keep up with the young guys this year, maybe next year. After that, it might be. I don't know if he's too old, but Terry's never, as much as we love him, he's never been some NFL freak. He's not Terrell Owens, right? He's not Jerry Rice. He's not CD Lamb where he just looks like a mega god, right? Like he's special because of the work ethic. He's special because of how much he puts into the craft of route running, how great his hands are. But he's not taller than everyone, faster than everyone, stronger than everyone. And so I do think what he did this year was amazing, and 90% of that was finally at a quarterback that could throw the ball accurately. And so I think he can get 1,000 yards. I don't think he's getting 13 touchdowns again, and that's what would hold him back, I think.
A-Watt, appreciate the time as always. Before we let you get out of here, give us the lowdown. Football Fest. It's coming up in, a little less than a month now, right?
Yeah, a little less than a month away from my annual kickoff event. Kick off the football season with me and all your friends from 910 The Fan in Richmond with special guests like Tim Hightower and Fred Smoot. We'll have representatives from all the local universities like Virginia Tech, UVA, ODU, JMU. And so it's the only combination that you'll find of a festival that's music and sports. So we got a headline band, Gone Country, Richmond's favorite country music band. Mackenzie Ryan will be back to do a set, and she performs the national anthem. And then I take the stage with our special guest and do a full football season preview show. And we're going to be giving away prizes, swag, and we're even going to send people to Northwest Stadium. The only way you can get to Northwest Stadium through 910 The Fan is coming to Football Festival. August 16th, 6 to 10 p.m. prime time this year under the lights at Scott's Edition River City Roll.
It's coming up, what I'm excited for it. Appreciate it as always, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
That is Adam Epstein. You can hear him take the airwaves in Richmond in a little under an hour here, and you hear him every Saturday on 106.7 The Fan from 9 a.m. to noon. So there was one thing that Awad mentioned that I would like to address. He is not the first person that has mentioned this to me. As some of you know, I do a Sunday show on the BetMGM network, and my co-host on that show is PJ Glasser. He has brought this up to me, and I've just seen this conversation at various points on social media about Washington and primetime games and not being able to handle primetime games or the potential of struggling in primetime games. That to me is nothing more than offseason talk. I do not think that this organization is afraid of primetime games. The worst thing about having Kirk Cousins here for the years that he was, and Kirk just playing the amount of years that he has in the NFL and being a prominent figure, is I think people put a little bit too much stock into when the game is kicked off. And we saw that last year with Jaden Daniels. One of my favorite moments from media availability was the lead up to Cincinnati. I can't remember who asked the question. They had good intentions, but I can't remember who asked the question. Regardless, they asked Jaden, "Are you prepared to play in Cincinnati at night?" And Jaden looked at the reporter and said, "I played in the SEC." As if Cincinnati at night is going to be a more difficult place to play than Alabama at night when he was wearing LSU purple and gold. I am not afraid of primetime games. This is not the Dan Snyder era where the team was awful in primetime games. The team was awful in primetime games because they had terrible quarterbacks. This team does not have a terrible quarterback anymore. I am not worried about primetime games in the slightest. I think Washington will be fine. That is also a benefit of having an old roster. I don't love that they have the oldest roster in the NFL, but the benefit is they have a lot of guys that have played in a lot of primetime games, and they have guys that have played in Super Bowls on this roster. So a Thursday night game against Green Bay in week number 2, not worried about that one. A Christmas Day game against Dallas, not worried about that one. Monday night against Chicago, not worried about that one. They'll be fine in primetime. I don't think that's going to be something that deters this franchise terribly much in 2025. Rob Brown is going to join us from the great state of South Carolina in 15 minutes to talk a little bit about the future of college football. He was at SEC Media Days. You guys know I love college football. There's a lot of moving parts to the potential of what the college football playoff is going to look like for years to come. He joins us in 15 minutes, but coming up next, a surprise resignation that might impact contracts in the NFL. Don't go anywhere. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dan Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. The Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. Rob Brown of the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate in South Carolina in about 10 minutes. Talk a little bit about SEC Media Days and the future of college football and the college football playoff. Ben Standig will join us at noon. Waking up this morning to more NFL news. It was not Von Miller signing in D.C. That obviously happened 2 days ago. But this Lloyd Howell scenario that is playing out in the NFL PA offices has been really compelling to watch from afar. So if you are not aware of this story, has Kevin talked about this, Max?
A little bit. We kind of talked about it when Pablo Torre and Mike Florio initially did their big podcast, but we haven't really touched on much of the follow-ups that they've been kind of releasing over the past couple weeks. So if you want to take the listeners through, because it's a very confusing issue in a lot of ways, but from my understanding, it's a big conflict of interest because he's currently was employed by the Carlisle Group.
So Lloyd Howell was the leader of the NFLPA, a high-level executive at the NFLPA. And we first learned about this guy's name because of the Pablo Torre Finds Out podcast. He and Mike Florio reported elements of collusion with the owners and the league after the Deshaun Watson contract was signed. The collusion was they wanted to limit the amounts of guaranteed money that would be given out during contracts because the Cleveland Browns went rogue and signed Deshaun Watson to a fully guaranteed contract. And everyone was like, hey, we can't do this. This is a terrible precedent. It ended up being a terrible contract. Who saw that one coming, right? Only everybody. But it ended up being a terrible contract, so there was an element of collusion. That was what was originally reported on the Pablo Torre podcast with Mike Florio, right? Then ESPN dives into this, and they find out that not only was this collusion happening, but this guy, Lloyd Howell Jr., was very much aware of the collusion, and he was kind of one of the figureheads that was pushing for the collusion inside the NFLPA. And then once you got ESPN on you, like ESPN doesn't carry the same sort of significant kind of oomph that it once did in journalism, but they still have real big J journalists on the payroll, specifically Don Van Natta Jr. Don Van Natta, very much a friend of this program. He was one of the many guys that would constantly report things about Dan Snyder when we were trying to get his rat-faced bastard ass out of here, right? So when Don Van Natta Jr. is on your case, you're toast. You are dead in the water. He is coming for you. So he reported not only did Lloyd Howell Jr. know about this, he is also a paid consultant at the Carlisle Group. Who's the Carlisle Group? The Carlisle Group is a group, it's one of a very small amount of groups that the NFL has allowed to be an investor in the league or has given them permission to be investors in the league. When people found out that Lloyd Howell was a member of this group, allegedly inside the NFLPA, they said, you should resign. This is a clear conflict of interest. You can very easily sway things in one way or the other. But if you're going to sway things, like if you are the head of the PA and the head of a group that's trying to invest in the NFL, you are going to sway things in the direction of the group investing in the NFL, which would then in turn be a very bad look for the players, and you would be doing a disservice to the players. They said, hey, you should resign because of this. And he said no. And then there was some convoluted reporting on whether that question was actually asked of him. Did they actually ask him to resign? Did they not actually ask him to resign? Well, yesterday he resigned. He resigned because of all of the buildup of this story. And then on top of that, there was a piece of news that came out that took place in 2011 where there was some sort of sexual misconduct that took place at Bose Allen when he was a high-level executive at Bose Allen. It was described in the article that I read as sexual misconduct and retaliation, which is never good. Never good. If you just put that in simple terms, he probably asked somebody for a favor, very similar to what Mr. CEO of Astronomer was asking, although it just was not received as well as the head of HR with the CEO of Astronomer. Maybe Coldplay was not in town in 2011 for this guy at Bose Allen. So you have all these things, and he says, I am resigning. This has been an awful look for the NFLPA. Absolutely awful. An organization that, at least in the from a broad perspective, I have thought that the NFL has done a relatively decent job with CBAs. Not great jobs. The players are never going to have the upper hand on the owners. It's just never going to happen. This was designed so that the owners are always going to have the upper hand. I don't care what sport you're talking about, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL. It does not matter. The owners are always going to have the upper hand on the players. But I have felt like the players and the CBA has been relatively decent. Now, there has not been a CBA that has been negotiated in the tenure of Lloyd Howell. He's been there for a little over 2 years, but that was right around the time of this Deshaun Watson contract, which is why this has been all up in arms. I use this as an example, Max, to really highlight, in a day and age where it feels like good quality journalism is constantly under attack, good quality journalism is going to prevail in some capacity or another. Who would have thought that a guy that was more so on ESPN, an opinion guy? I liked High Noon with Pablo Torre and Bomani Jones. I believe Pablo Torre got his start on ESPN, at least on television, on Around the Horn, and he filled in for PTI periodically. I think he still fills in now for PTI periodically. He's one of the few guys, I think, that was let go by ESPN that is now freelancing for ESPN, a very small fraternity of people to do that because his podcast is on the Ringer podcast network. Maybe you don't care about the ins and outs of the media, but I find that to be interesting. It is just a nice quality example that good journalism will prevail when you have the right people on it. We just now need Pablo Torre to get on to things that matter a little bit more than this particular collusion case. Not that the collusion case does not matter, but there's some other things in the world that I feel like if you sick Pablo Torre on, you might be able to get it done by dinner time tonight. The guy's a reporting guru at this point.
If I told him to search for a specific list that may or may not exist, I have the utmost confidence that he would find it.
He would be able to find something of it. I mean, my favorite. So I watch and listen to this podcast from time to time. Not a ton, but from time to time. I knew he was a little bit of a psycho, and I use psycho in a positive way here, like a sicko. I knew he was a little bit of a sicko when I saw the video of him in the Airbnb that allegedly Bill Belichick was walking out of shirtless with Jordan Hudson all those years ago. If you're going to those depths for a good piece of journalism, you are a king of the game.
It kind of hit me when I saw that video. It was like, oh, he really does.
He's like, he is
find
different.
Out everything.
He is him, as the kids say. He is in fact him. Before we get to Rob Brown of the Fan Upstate, one thing I do want to mention, we'll do a little bit of Denton's Daily News in about 40 minutes here. But one thing I do want to mention that's kind of a bummer. Caitlin Clark is not going to be participating in the WNBA All-Star events tonight or the game tomorrow. Dog, you want to talk about a gut punch? This is a gut punch. I wanted to see Caitlin Clark. I happen to like All-Star festivities still. I know I'm in the minority of that, whether it be the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NBA. The dunk contest sucks in the NBA, but the festivities itself I still find to be at least moderately entertaining. This was supposed to be a massive weekend for the WNBA, and with Caitlin Clark not participating in anything, I mean, it is just a gut punch. She'll be there. You'll still see her on camera, but she's not going to be in the three-point contest, which she was scheduled to be in. She was the team captain for the All-Star game, which she will now not play in. You got to feel bad for the other players because with the attention that Caitlin Clark brings, the attention then would be on them as well. And now they have seemed to do a little bit of a 180 in terms of at least respecting Caitlin Clark when last year she was a rookie coming into a league that's existed for a long time that people are just finding out about. There's going to be some friction. She earned respect because she handled it well. So it feels like people are much more friendly in the direction of Caitlin Clark than they were her rookie season. Everybody wants the attention because a rising tide lifts all ships. And now she is not going to be participating. By the way, it's in Indiana as well. All the events are in Indiana, which is where Caitlin Clark played. I'm sure the arenas will still be sold out. But for an organization that I will say actually timed its All-Star break at a pretty decent time, in the sports calendar. My biggest gripe with the WNBA is and always has been that they start their playoffs around the start of the NFL season, and then they play games on Sundays. And it's just like, what do you?
Bad for business.
It's terrible for business. You have to have some self-awareness. You're setting yourself up for failure with that. The timing of their all-star events in the summer actually lines up relatively well. Maybe you love baseball, but outside of baseball, there's really not a whole lot going on in the sports world. So no Caitlin Clark, there's a little bit of a gut punch. Let's talk some college football. Rob Brown, the fan upstate in South Carolina and the BetMGM network. He is going to join us next. He was at SEC Media Day, and there's been a lot of chatter as to how the college football playoff model is going to change. We'll get his take on it when we get back. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980.
All right. Well, as we just mentioned, Lloyd Howell is out as the executive director of the NFL Players Association. This comes amid scrutiny regarding a collusion case, as well as Howell's part-time consulting position at the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm approved to seek minority ownership of NFL teams. And TJ Watt has reached a deal with the Steelers to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in football. He reached a 3-year extension worth up to $123 million, with 108 fully guaranteed at signing. Meanwhile, Mike Williams is retiring. He's closing the book on an 8-year NFL career. Williams was looking to make his return to the Chargers roster after a disappointing final couple of seasons. He was working through an injury at Chargers camp and was placed on the physically unable to perform list before training camp. Dame Lillard is returning to the Portland Trailblazers after being waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. Dame signs a 3-year, $42 million contract and is set to make over $141 million over the next 2 seasons. After almost 2 weeks, baseball is back in the nation's capital. The Nats return from the All-Star break tonight to take on the San Diego Padres. Michael Soroka likely to get the start against Dylan Cease. First pitch is at 6:45. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin on a Friday on the Team 980. Ben Standig in 20 minutes. His thoughts on the Terry McLaurin contract coming up then. It was a big week in college football. SEC Media Day, a 4-day event because the SEC does nothing small. Lots of conversation about the college football playoff and what it's going to look like for years to come. Guy that was there is the mighty Rob Brown. He's the host of the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate in the great state of South Carolina. You can also see him on the weekends on the BetMGM network with Cody Decker from 12 to 4. And he joins me now here on the Team 980. Rob, my friend, always great to catch up. How was SEC Media Days when you were out there?
I mean, not as good as sharing the airways with Denton Day, but it was like a solid second place to that, buddy. It was good. It was interesting. Like this was, and I kind of had this thought on Monday because the predominant conversation was football. It was quarterbacks. It was, returning experience. It was young guys. It was coaches. It was strategies. It was results and records and championships. And it kind of felt like for the first year since dating back to 2020, we had the pandemic, we had NIL, we had conference expansion, we had the transfer portal, we had conference realignment, we had this, that, and the other. This felt like the first media day where we were talking about football. And just as a football guy, I find all the business side of it. I'm one of those 17 people in America that's super weird and fascinated by the business angle of the sport. But as a football guy, it was the first media days that we've done since 2020 that it really felt like it was predominantly about football players, football coaches, and football teams. And that was very nice and refreshing. Also, I've been called many adjectives, but that's the first time I've been called mighty. Thank you for inflating the ego, buddy.
That's what I'm here to. That's what I'm here to do. Who felt like the big dog when you were walking around Atlanta?
Big dog is a fun euphemism to use because it was Georgia and Texas were the two teams that, pretty much consensus. Everybody had them 1 and 2, either Texas first or Georgia first, but those two 1 and 2, and those were the answers. But I will tell you what I think was another interesting angle of this. This is maybe the most interesting class of quarterbacks as a conference top to bottom that this conference has ever had, because there are a lot of them that could be bona fide superstars, and a lot of them that it feels like these programs are kind of hinging their entire season on. And yet we have questions about all of them. And I am starting all the way with Arch Manning at Texas. Steve Spurrier 2 weeks ago asked the question, if this cat is transform a program good, how did he not beat out Quinn Ewers as the number 1 quarterback last year? And I thought it was a fair question. Gunnar Stockton at Georgia, one of the most highly touted quarterback recruits in a very long time. But we haven't really heard anything about the kid since he got to college other than transfer portal kind of stuff. Is Gunnar Stockton good enough to step into the shoes of Carson Beck and lead Georgia, Florida, DJ Lagway? We know he's incredibly impressive athletically. Does he have it in him to guide the offense for a full season and be electric for a full season? Question mark. South Carolina, Lenora Sellers, probably one of the few proven commodities in the SEC at quarterback. But the question was, how much higher can he elevate? Can he take this team, which on paper looks like more like a 7-5 team than a 10-2 or 9-3 team? But is Lenora Sellers able to Cam Newton, Tim Tebow his way to bullying that team to be 10-2, 11-1 backdooring in? You've got all John Mateer at Oklahoma, same questions, right? Like, this is a super interesting class of quarterbacks in that there could be 7, 8, 9 of them that are bona fide stars, and yet every one of them could also be not that and ruin the hopes and dreams of many a college football fan across the conference. So because of that, Georgia and Texas were the top dogs in terms of teams that had their coaches and players being followed around. But every time that a John Mateer or an Arch Manning or a Lenore Sellers or a Gunnar Stockton walked past me, they were just being followed by a gaggle of people trying to talk and ask questions and all that. And I think that is because the narrative in this conference this year is which quarterbacks are going to live up to the hype, and are there any that could guide a maybe second-tier program ahead of a Texas or a Georgia because they did indeed find a star.
Talking with Rob Brown. He was at SEC Media Days. He hosts a Rob Brown show on the Fan Upstate in South Carolina. Was the Arch Manning experience as big of a deal as it seemed to be on social media?
Here's what I will say about Arch Manning, and I want to give him credit first, because there was a spot during media days that there was a group of us doing kind of an open Q&A with him. And somebody asked him about the hype, right? Like, Arch Manning, let's be real, is being talked about differently than every other quarterback in America right now. He's the shortest odds to win the Heisman Trophy. The most people down here are basically saying if Arch is a star, Texas wins the national championship, yada, yada, yada. And so one of the folks that was there asked Arch Manning, talk to me about the hype. What is your opinion on the hype? People are saying you're a Heisman favorite, that you can lead Texas to a title. Do you feel the pressure? And Arch Manning, to his credit, who, by the way, is absolutely a Manning, right? Like, my dude all these other guys are showing up in tailored custom suits. My dude showed up in a pair of like Old Navy khakis, a blue blazer, and a white shirt, like the standard freshman frat boy uniform of choice. Just like everybody else was the chains and the rings and the bling. Arch just looked like, if you didn't know who Arch Manning was and you walked past him, you'd think he was like a high school intern that was working the event, right? But reporter asked him about the pressure and the hype, and his answer, point blank, without a moment of hesitation, was, yeah, I mean, I get it and I appreciate it, but I played 2 games, guys. Like, I don't know why I'm having all of this piled on me. Sure, I'm going to do my best to live up to it. I know that a lot of people are counting on me. I'm going to do all I can to live up to it. I have played 2 games. This is my first year as QB1. Like, he was kind of trying almost to maybe lighten up the conversation that Arch is Texas and Texas is Arch. But he was very gracious and humble in the way that he attacked it. And I'm one of the guys that has a lot of questions about Arch Manning, and if in his first year as QB1, can he live up to that? But as far as being the guy, like, he was the player of every player at this event that was hounded the most, that had the biggest flock of people following him around, handled it like a pro. Now, he also has the benefit, obviously, of being able to talk to a grandfather, a father, and an uncle who obviously all at different points in their career were also highlight players and kind of get their advice, but handled everything like a pro, never really seemed to buckle under the pressure, was well-spoken, seemed like a guy who had his bleep together. And now it's just, I think he basically quashed that conversation that, okay, like, we know what the questions are. He knows the pressure that's on him. Let's get to August 31st and let's play some damn football.
Rob Brown with me here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. You mentioned Lenore Sellers. I loved Lenore Sellers last season. I think a lot of people started to fall in love with South Carolina towards the end of the season. Was there a little bit of a renewed confidence with South Carolina that you guys haven't seen lately?
Yes, there is. Now, with that being said, Shane Beamer also specifically pointed out that that team still views themselves as underdogs in the conference. He thinks they are still viewed as underdogs in the conference, and I don't think that that is particularly unfair. They had a great year last year. They were 1 win away from being in the playoffs. If you go back and you change the result of the loss to Alabama, where they shot themselves in the foot late, if you go back and change the loss to LSU, where, I don't care, judge away, the referees openly ripped that game away from them down the stretch. Either one of those two becomes a win. The South Carolina Gamecocks are in the playoffs. So I do think there is a sense of confidence, but Shane has also pointed out, we've had good years before. He was at South Carolina 15, whatever it was, years ago when they played for their only SEC title in a year where they beat Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia all in the same year. This team has had success on and off. They've just never been able to sustain it. And it does feel like if there is a year to show that they can string good years together, it's this year. What I will say, and I think this is unspoken but known, I think they know what Lenore Sellers is. They know he's special. They know he can probably be the best quarterback that this program has ever had. And I include some big names in that over the years, but the best quarterback they've ever had. And I do think the pressure is on Shane Beamer in South Carolina with the knowledge, belief, whatever you want to call it, that if they do not accomplish something with Lenore Sellers, backdoor themselves into a surprise SEC title game, or make the playoffs, or just accomplish something that you can go bang another successful season with Lenore Sellers, then if you're a future 4 or 5-star quarterback that South Carolina makes an offer to, and you look and you go, wait a minute, they had Lenore Sellers, they had a stud, and they could not win with that guy. You put yourself in a spot where future star quarterbacks may not be interested in coming to South Carolina, no matter how much of a stellar dude and players coach Shane Beamer is. So there is a lot of confidence in South Carolina. Offensive line's a question. Run game is a big question. Still waiting to find out if the NCAA is going to give a waiver to Rasul Faison, the guy that transferred from Utah State, or if they're going to be going with, a guy who is probably a third stringer on a lot of other teams. But they know they've got wide receivers this year. They know they've got, even though they lost some talent in guys like Nick Emanwori to the league, they know they've got a lot of veteran experience, a lot of 3- and 4-year starters coming back on defense. But I think the pressure is on. If you get a great year out of Lenore's, but you don't accomplish anything at South Carolina, then a lot of future stars are going to go, I'm not going to win anything there. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be about me. It's a great culture. Shane Beamer's a really nice guy. But if I want to win something, that's not the school to go to. So there is confidence net and day, but I would also point out, I think there may be a little bit of apprehension, anxiety, whatever words you want to use here, of if we don't get it done this year, it's going to be real hard to continue to convince big names to want to come here.
What is the best playoff model?
I am all in on the 5+11 model. That is my belief. And it's for 2 reasons. One of which is as a college football fan, one of which is as somebody who covers the SEC. From a college football fan perspective, you leave the door open for everybody. You leave a wider gap in the door for everybody. If you go with the one model I do not like is the 4-4-2-2-1+ model, right? Because if you give 8 of what will be 16 playoff spots, I don't care what anybody says, we're going to 16. There's too much money on the table to turn down. Money drives everything. Yes, even our beloved college football. When we go to 16, if you give half the field to 2 conferences without the requirement that they prove that they deserve half the field that year, you're also shutting half the field out for the overwhelming majority of college football teams, right? So if you go with that model, I think you kind of limit the ability for other schools to be able to grow under the oppressive thumb of the Big Ten and the SEC. If you go 5+11, from the overall college football perspective, teams that are in the newly formed Pac, whatever they are today, teams that are in the ACC, teams that are in the Big 12, teams that are in the Mountain Valley, the whatever conference, the door's open. And they may have to do a lot more to prove that they deserve to be in over an SEC or Big Ten team that maybe has a loss or 2 more than they do, but they can do that. They can be impressive. And Ashton Jeanty at Boise State can get them in. And the question becomes, what if there's 2 Ashton Jeantys at 2 Boise States, and you only have a model that allows 1 group of 5 team, but we go, maybe this is the special team, right? Like maybe this is the one that deserves that shot and will get it done. You would lock one out. So if you go 5+11, what you're going to get, I think, is more years than you don't. You are going to get 4 SEC teams in. You are going to get 4 Big Ten teams in. But for the SEC, which kind of flips to the other side of this coin for me, I think if you look at last year, if we had a 16-team playoff last year, I think the SEC gets 6 teams in. And so if you're the SEC and your job, your desire is to create a playoff system where you get as many teams in as you can, 5+11 guarantees you're getting 4 in. Find me a year where there not be 4 SEC teams in the top 16, right? You're often getting 5, and I think there is the chance, like last year, and I think like this year, where you could get 6. So it makes sense to me that the SEC and the Big Ten are fighting, because the SEC is not, or the Big Ten is not 6 teams deep. It's not getting more than 4. The SEC would, and I think that's where that fight comes from. I think the 5+11 is good for everybody who is not the SEC and the Big Ten. I also think the 5+11 is good for the SEC as well.
Yeah, maybe in like 5-10 years when Michigan is back, they might get 5 in the Big Ten, but it feels like there's a lot of work to be done. Rob, always appreciate it, my friend. It's great to catch up. I'm glad you had fun out there in Atlanta. We'll do this again soon.
Dude, I will be at ACC Media Days next week. I cannot wait to come back and talk about the one team from that conference that matters.
That one team is who I've already picked to win the national championship. So we will definitely talk about that one particular team in orange. Thank you, my friend.
You got it, brother. Love you a long time. See you soon, pal.
That is Rob Brown. He is the host of the Rob Brown Show in the Fan, on the Fan upstate in South Carolina. He's also on the BetMGM network on Saturdays from noon to 4 p.m. with Cody Decker. Coming up, we transition back into the NFL. The poll question is up on our Twitter page. If you have not gone and voted for it, please go do so at the Team 980. You can find me on Twitter at the Denton Day. Do you believe that Terry McLaurin will get an extension done by the beginning of training camp? It's a yes or a no poll question. Go vote on that. We will ask Ben Standig that question when we get back. He joins us on the other side. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day, sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. Is the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. Nats back in action today after a long All-Star break. I say long because there was nothing to bet on, and I'm a degenerate. Ryan Clary, Locked On Nats, is going to be with us in about 30 minutes. But right now, as we do each and every Monday through Friday on the Kevin Sheehan Show at noon, we welcome on the great Ben Standig to the program. Ben, long time no chat, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Where do you want to start? Is there something you are most passionate about? There's been a lot to discuss. Actually, you know what? I'm going to direct it. How about we start with Von Miller? We'll get to the Terry stuff. Everybody wants to hear about the Terry stuff. What were your thoughts on the Von Miller signing late on Wednesday evening?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all were like, hey, they're going to do some more on the edge, right? And obviously there was the higher targets or Trey Hendrickson's. But, you know, for me, looking at the landscape, there was a bunch of guys who in the Von Miller sort of category. I mean, he's up, you know, the best of the bunch when it comes to his career as a pass rusher. But, you know, a lot of guys who were out there who can rush a passer, but like kind of over 30, so you don't quite know what you're going to get, and it's going to be limited most likely. But he, you know, of those guys, you know, he certainly makes a lot of sense. He had 6 sacks last year. Sacks is not always the appropriate gauge for how well a player is performing as a pass rusher. But if you look at some of the metrics on Pro Football Focus, he was ranked top 10 in win rate percentage for edge rushers. There's another metric that factors in sacks, QB hits, hurries, and the number of pass rush attempts. And he was also top 10 there. So, you know, again, if we're talking about somebody who at this point is probably coming off the bench, he's played less than 40% of the snaps the last 2 seasons. He's missed some games because of injury, but for a team that, you know, there were certainly some questions about what they had at pass rusher, adding a guy like Von Miller is, you know, an easy way to go and a pretty logical move.
What is a successful year for him here in DC?
You know, I don't know what, like, from a number perspective in terms of like sacks, but I just think, you know, if you feel his presence out there, he's likely going to be brought in primarily on pass rushing downs. And, you know, like I said, it's not always about taking down the quarterback. It's about disrupting the play, the timing. And if we're sitting there going, boy, Von Miller, he has been a presence, and, you know, then I think that works. I think sometimes a player will get a sack and we'll point to that and say, oh, okay, yeah, you know, good on that. But then he's not really there. We don't see much the other times. So I just think consistent presence from him. And again, they're not going to have to rely on him, you know, to play a ton. You still have, you know, Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, Cleveland Farrell, some others. So, you know, as long as he's able to stay on the field, play, and be a presence, I think to me that would be a pretty good year.
I know Vaughn is not going to be thrust into a starting position, nor should he. I would assume that Dorrance starts on one side of the defensive line. Do you have any idea as to who will be occupying the other side?
I mean, I would assume it's going to be Dietrich Wise. I mean, when you consider, you know, if we're still looking at a 1st and 10 situation where the run is, you know, a likely option, as we know, but they weren't very good against the run last year, and Dietrich Wise was brought in for just that reason. So I think, you know, he can also rush the passer. So I think he's more of the, you know, again, maybe not an every down player, but he's more of that multi-down player and an early down guy. So I would think it would be Wise. I mean, you know, Miller didn't start any games last year for the Bills. You know, and my sense is that the Bills moved on from him only because of money, not because of performance. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think he would be pretty good in that, you know, just coming in off the bench as like the 6th man, so to speak, if we're in the NBA parlance, and be the guy that designated pass rusher would be my guess.
Ben Standig with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. You can find Ben on Twitter at Ben Standig. Find his podcast, Last Man Standing, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. With Trey Amos being signed last night, all of the rookies are signed, correct?
I believe so, yes.
What was the holdup with Trey Amos? Did we ever figure that out?
It's this whole thing with the 2nd round picks and the guaranteed money, because I want to say the Raiders gave their early 2nd round pick a fully guaranteed deal, and that led to, agents and, saying, hey, well, if this is this precedent, then, hook us up. So it was just a trickle down effect, and it just took forever. And now, as we've seen over the last 24 hours or so, all the second round picks are coming to terms. So, Amos was one of them. And, he obviously was picked way down, towards the bottom of the second round, which was great for Washington, but also meant, in terms of this aspect, he's just going to follow the leader. And once others started to sign, it was just a matter of time for him.
So now that he's signed, Terry is next, right? That was the one holdup. It was the second round pick that they needed to sign before they could start talking with Terry. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Something tells me that was that was not necessarily the issue, but yeah, it is now officially all about. I mean, not that it wasn't already, but it's all about Terry McLaurin and signing him, and whether that's going to happen before these guys get out on the field next week. And you heard I was there when Terry spoke last week, or the other day, I should say, not last week. Obviously he's got some feelings about this, and not thrilled with the way it's gone so far. The negotiations, deadlines always create deals, is the saying, and there's a lot of truth to that. Well, there's a deadline coming up. I guess it depends if you look at it as training camp versus the start of the season. You want him on the field though for camp, so I would think that deadline is rapidly approaching. But I'm very curious to see what's going to happen here.
What was the overall environment like at Eastern Automotives, or Eastern Motors rather?
He was there. Terry was there to film a commercial, and got to watch that for a little bit. And he's going through all the steps there and different takes. And he was in a really good mood, and I think he was in a good mood. Even afterwards, I talked to him for a couple of moments. But yeah, when it got time to discuss his contract and where he's at with it, he was candid. He was forceful. He didn't hold back too much. And obviously it was just reporters there for the most part. It wasn't a team situation, so he could say whatever he wanted. His agent was there and just let him kind of keep going. So, Terry, even if we're just talking about a week 7 conversation about, whoever the Commanders are going to play that week, he talks at great length and talks, it gives long, expansive answers, thoughtful answers. So on a topic like this, where it's about him, truly, it's not just about the team, it's about his situation and how he feels he's being treated. He had a lot to say. So, yeah, it wasn't, it wasn't a lot of tension per se, but he clearly had some things he wanted to get off his chest.
Are you surprised that press conference was as long as it was? It felt like it went on forever.
Yeah, absolutely. The original notice saying, hey, he's going to be at Eastern Motors and will be available to talk afterwards, it was like 5 to 10 minutes, they said, which, seems reasonable. That's a normal thing. And I think for most of us, that probably would have been fine. But he just kept going. Like I said, he typically gives some fairly lengthy answers. His answers are not great for the short attention span world that we're all in. But obviously he and his agent felt it was going well, and that's why they kind of kept going. I imagine. I think there were a lot of different topics to get into. I asked him, about the age, that he's going to be 30 this year, and there's some notion that that could be a sticking point. And I think that was one of the things he elaborated it on in a way that wasn't just sort of talking points. He spoke about it, with some conviction, like people are acting like he's walking around with a cane or a walker or something. 30 is hardly old, and he doesn't have nearly as much wear and tear compared to other guys because he didn't play. He wasn't a full-time player at Ohio State until the end of his career, and it's only been 7 leagues. He hasn't 7 years going in here. He hasn't missed really any games since 2020, so he's been fine. So what are we talking about with age and all that? And I think that was one of the points he wanted to emphasize, because I imagine that is something that the team has brought up, because if you're comparing him to DK Metcalf or T. Higgins, 2 guys that signed deals this offseason, they're both 2 and 5 years younger than him respectively. And that doesn't have anything to do with what's going to happen next season or necessarily the season after that. But it is something that the team can use. And it appears at the moment that is one of the hangups. And, that's not going to change. He's going to be 30 in September no matter what. But, hopefully the two sides can figure out a way to mend that fence.
Our poll question today is whether or not he will sign prior to training camp. Do you think a deal gets done before he takes the field or before he is scheduled to take the field?
I'm going to be optimistic and say yes. Look, I guess the thing is, like, Adam Peters, when he was with San Francisco, the 49ers were willing to have some of these situations go, deep into training camp and, the preseason. So if Peters goes based off of his past, what he has seen, then it is possible this lingers and lingers. On the other hand, you just look at the situation. It's not like saying just pay the guy because, you have to get him on the field. But obviously having Terry on the field is going to be vitally important to this offense. It's still, in this recalibration under this new regime, is still trying to, beef up its talent. And while they added Deebo Samuel, he's not a traditional receiver by any stretch. The running back room, there's quality players there, but they don't have any real, dynamic threats. Zach Ertz was very good last year. Is that going to repeat? Is he going to be able to stay healthy? We'll see. Terry isn't just the best receiver on the team. He is the clear top playmaker. And, with Jaden Daniels, you want to build on that. They drafted an offensive tackle in the first round and traded for an offensive tackle because they wanted to help Jaden Daniels. So getting Terry on the field would seemingly be in that kind of thinking. And also, even if you're thinking, hey, Jaden Daniels is going to get paid here down the line, sure. But by the time that happens, if you give Terry a 3-year deal, then it's kind of be over by the time you have to make that call on what you're going to give Jaden. So I would think something gets done, but, clearly I think what's so interesting is we get to finally see now, or not finally, it's only the second year, but we get to see how Adam Peters and this organization are going to handle these situations. Everything last year was a pretty, kumbaya, let's hug it out, everything is great scenario. And not saying it isn't, but now business has shown up and, we're going to get to see how this plays out.
Ben Standig with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the Team 980. Did we ever get an update on Noah Brown after he left minicamp with what was described as a tough injury?
No, nothing definitive or official or anything along those lines. But whatever happened there, it doesn't seem like it was a significant. Wasn't a major injury, because otherwise I think we would have heard by now he's going to have surgery or be out or what have you. I don't know if this means he will or won't be on the field come day one of camp. Obviously, we'll find out here soon enough. But no, I don't have a strong vibe on that. But look, unless I'm forgetting something here, it's not like they went out and started signing receivers, right? I mean, they have some other options, but if it was a real concern, I think they'd probably go out and see what else is out there on the market.
Who do you think come week 1 starts opposite of Marshawn Lattimore outside?
I'll go with Trey Amos. I mean, obviously Jonathan Jones, who they signed in free agency, he's been there, done that vet. He was with New England on a couple of Super Bowl teams. He can play inside and outside. But, if Trey Amos is ready to go, he's much more of the prototype cornerback. He looked good in the offseason program. He's got the size, the speed, the confidence. So I would think he would be that guy, with Sanders still then moving to the slot. I guess that is the other consideration, is could you just leave Sanders still on the outside and either have Noah Igbenogany or Jones go in the slot? Sure, but I think ultimately Sanders still is going to be a slot, and Amos is the guy on the outside. So that would be my guess. Again, as he looked fine in the offseason program, as I said. We'll see what happens here in training camp and preseason. Obviously, he's going to be going up against Jaden Daniels quite a bit. And, that could lead to some tough moments, but it's also the opportunity to show what he can do. And I think he's shown, from what we've seen already, that he's not afraid of the moment. And so I think he'll ultimately be that guy opposite Lattimore.
There has been conversation about Jaden taking a step back. People say they look to C.J. Stroud. He took a step back. If you're crazy, you look at Robert in 2012, 2013, and say, well, big step back there. Obviously, we know there's a lot that went into that. Are you worried about a step back for Jaden Daniels?
I am not. I don't say that blindly or flippantly. I'm aware that, the league now has tape on him, and they now, have a better feel for what Cliff Kingsbury's offense is going to look like. And, you can imagine that, all that Jaden was doing last year, it took some people by surprise to some degree. I mean, it wasn't like he was a nobody. He just won the Heisman Trophy and was the number 2 pick. But all that said, it also is Jaden Daniels now comes in with another year of experience. And, if it was just based on the physical component, you might say, hey, there's, sure, it's reasonable to think he could take a step back, but there really just wasn't anything you're going, wow, that was a major problem last year. There's things to work on, but nothing dramatic. Just like every quarterback, no matter who they are, works in the offseason to improve their game or add something to it. And the fact that this guy is just, he's a self-described introvert. He's all about work on football, not about, the scene. And I think with that mentality, the guy who's getting to the building, super duper early in the morning before practice, I just think that's going to be a tough situation for me to believe he's going to have a step back. I mean, similar to the team, could the numbers be worse and he still is better? Yeah, I mean, I think that's conceivable. They have a tougher schedule and, and all that. But I'd be surprised if he has anything that would resemble a step back this year.
Final thing here. Does Brad actually play his contract out in Los Angeles, the full thing, all 2 years?
I mean, I kind of doubt it. I guess we'll see what happens this year. I think that the Bradley Beal conversation has, this happens so often, and not just with sports, but all kind of conversations that people hammer home a point for so long they forget what the actual point is. People act like Bradley Beal's a bum of a player. Absolutely not. He's still his shooting percentages last year were very good. He can still score a ton of points. He was miscast as a primary ball handler in Phoenix, which is also he was miscast in the later stages here with Washington. But ultimately it was just the contract. He was getting paid a lot of money for a guy who's good but not that good. That's the issue. So I think it's actually a pretty good fit with the Clippers. So if he has a good year, I think therefore logically he opts out and then tries to see what he could do. I would imagine he could get if he had not just taken if he didn't have the buyout situation where he's just sort of getting a salary to sort of fill in what he had to give back to the Suns. I suspect he would have gotten some decent money on the market though. Yeah, I would guess it's one and done. I also do know though that like he has a place out in LA. His wife is from LA. I think staying in LA is important. That's why I think he picked the Clippers as much as anything else. So if that's a factor, then maybe he stays, but I would imagine it's on a new deal, even if he does.
He has been Standig. You can hear his podcast, Last Man Standig, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Ben, appreciate it. Enjoy the weekend, and we will do this again on Monday.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Thanks. That
is Ben Standig. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Ben Standig. So some really good stuff there. Rookies reported today. Veterans report early next week, and then practice will begin at the end of next week. Our poll question: do you believe that Terry McLaurin will sign before training camp begins? Yes or no? We will take a look at that when we get back. Ryan Clarity, host of the Locked On Nationals podcast, is going to join us in 15 minutes. But when we get back, which former quarterback ranked Jared Goff ahead of Jaden Daniels? You will not believe it. Don't go anywhere. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dent Day sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980. Nats in action tonight. They take on the Padres at Nationals Park. First game back since the All-Star break. Ryan Clary in 10 minutes here on the show from the Locked On Nationals podcast. We just had Ben Standig on the program. It is the Kevin Sheehan Show with Denton Day sitting in for Kevin. A bunch of great guests today. Rob Brown was awesome on college football. If you missed any of it, you can go check it out. Odyssey app. We're also streaming on iHeartRadio and TuneIn. Chapter section. Go back, listen to it. Podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and wherever it is that you get your podcast. We're also on YouTube. You can just rewind on the YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the Team 980 on YouTube, what the hell are you doing? Go subscribe to it. You see Kevin every day from 10 to 1, Craig from 4 to 7, Denton's Office on YouTube as well. Go subscribe to the YouTube. I came across a soundbite from a once great quarterback that I would like to play for you. This is Cam Newton on his podcast, 4th and 1. It's list season in the NFL. We are participating in lists. Everybody is participating in lists. Cam Newton is ranking his quarterbacks. This is taken with more of a grain of salt, or maybe less of a grain of salt. It's taken with more, I would say, in-depth consideration, considering who Cam Newton is. He's a guy that played quarterback. When quarterbacks talk about quarterbacks, I tend to listen just a little bit more. This is Cam Newton ranking Jaden Daniels, and you'll be stunned as to some of the names who are in front of him.
Number 5, Matthew Stafford. He doesn't get enough credit. If he's healthy, he gonna deliver. Number 6, Jared Goff. Number 7, Jaden Daniels. Number 8, C.J. Stroud. 9, Justin Herbert, and Baker Mayfield.
C.J. Stroud, after the year that he had last year, you think this year is the bounce back year for him?
C.J. Stroud, Tank Dell stripped away from him. Stephon Diggs stripped away from him. Nico Collins.
All right,
stripped
we can cut this off here. Did you hear that name, Max? That was before Jaden Daniels. It was like right between Matthew Stafford and Jaden Daniels. There was a name in there.
Was a name that got beaten by Jaden Daniels in the playoffs. Now, wins are not a quarterback stat, but in the playoffs, they do matter.
It is a guy that has great offensive line, something Jaden Daniels did not have. 2 very, very good wide receivers.
One of the best offensive minds in football.
2 very, very good running backs that we have filled lots of time this summer discussing how can Washington get a guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs? Well, Jared Goff had a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, and it still wasn't enough against the defense in Washington. That Washington's defense wasn't atrocious by any stretch of the imagination. They weren't the 85 Bears either, right? And Jared Goff couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
He also cost me jewelry, which he needs to pay the $9 for, because I lost a ring when he threw an interception to Quan Martin at Honor Brewery when Linnell and I were out there. So I don't know if Jared Goff, if he wants my Venmo, but he can, he knows where to find me. Calling Jared Goff better than Jaden Daniels, I'm actually very upset that there was not more of an explanation as to what it is that would possess Cam Newton to say that Jared Goff is better than Jaden Daniels, outside of the simple fact, very simple fact, that Cam Newton does not watch Jaden Daniels. Because about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, maybe it's 3 weeks ago, it's summer. Time is a weird thing in summer. But on his podcast, he had Wale on, and he asked Wale what the differences were between Robert and Jaden, and why he should believe, him being the quarterback, asking the rapper why Jaden Daniels would not have a fall off the way that Robert did.
Fear Jaden Daniels could be a potential one-hit wonder?
Nah.
What makes him different?
I think he loves the game too much.
But speak to me like from a D&B.
He loves the game too much. You got people that don't love the game.
Mm-hmm.
They love what comes with the game. That boy loves the game. Like, he just loves the game. Like,
seen a lot of success as a rookie season.
I worry about that with our most like CJ struggled a little bit the second year, but the line was a little.
But I'm gonna say it in this way: there's nobody who had the game in a chokehold like Robert Griffin III. But RG3, bro, I have to tip my hat to him.
One of the GOAT rookie seasons.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see that same thing happening for Jaden, and as being in that community, do you fear that?
I mean, I think you always fear, like, we got PTSD of not winning for so long. So it's like we don't even know how to have good things. We don't know what it's like to be like having 5 primetime games this year. Like, we don't know. Like, so it's like there's a reason why. You know what I'm saying? And this is the kid from LSU. But so we like, damn, like, okay, when is the honeymoon over? Like, you know what I'm saying? It's easy to think like that, but I gotta believe in, like, you know, the new organization and new GM. You know, they got plans for the new stadium. So, like, we going in the right direction. We trying to right them wrongs from all them years.
Surely he knows the answer to that, though, right? Like, surely Cam Newton, who was playing in the NFL when RG3 had the game on a chokehold, and understands more than most, based off of his own skill set, why Robert had the game in the chokehold. He ran the read option, which no one had ever seen before at that level in the NFL. It was, for all intensive purposes, gimmicky. Now, he ran it better than anybody. I will die on that hill. I'm not going to defend Robert in most instances. However, I will say he ran it better than anybody. San Francisco got to the Super Bowl running the read option with Kaepernick. If Robert doesn't get hurt, that is likely Washington in the Super Bowl. That aside, we're not going to play the what-if game here. Once everybody figured out the read option, there wasn't a lot there. He wasn't a drop back passer as much as he wanted to be. He wasn't the most accurate thrower of the football. He couldn't process defenses. There isn't one thing that Jaden did that had never been done before in the NFL in a same way that the read option had never been run before. What Jaden did in his rookie season was he just played quarterback better than everybody else, or better than most people in the NFL, and was in the MVP conversation. Ranking Jared Goff ahead of him when Jared Goff cannot do nearly as many things from an explosive side as Jaden can, and then considering the fact that Jared Goff had an abundance of riches on the offensive side where Jaden had Terry McLaurin and a bunch of dudes. Like, I don't know that Cam Newton could name the other receivers on the team last year, but he still thinks that Jared Goff is better than Jaden Daniels. How is that possible?
I got to see you for another year.
And again, that other year conversation makes me want to slam my head through the glass that separates us.
It's silly.
It's unbelievable, especially coming from a quarterback that understands, like, the washed up point of, well, now everyone's going to know what to expect because no defensive coordinator watches film from week to week. They base everything all on college tape, right? So after seeing Jaden Daniels play the first 3 weeks, no one knew how to prepare. Seeing the first 10 weeks, no one in the second 10 weeks knew how to prepare. Teams that played him twice, they had no idea what they were doing. That is a wash topic. Oh, he needs to do it more than 1 year. That is to me a wash topic. And it's not even like Jared Goff has put together a string of insane seasons. He's been really good with Ben Johnson. He was really good with Sean McVay, but those are offensive geniuses. Cliff is a really good offensive coordinator. I think Cliff is a great offensive coordinator, but a lot of what we saw was Jaden last year. I expect better from Cam Newton because I know that he's smarter than this. I actually happen to think that Cam Newton is a very intelligent football mind. It does pain me a little bit watching him. It feels like dumb himself down a little bit to the hot take artist to fit in with the mothership programming. So he gets more invitations with Mr. Stephen A. Smith on all of his 18,000 shows. I just can't fathom watching Jared Goff critically and then watching Jaden Daniels critically and saying, yeah, the guy that plays for Detroit is better than the guy that plays for Washington, especially after watching them in the playoffs. I know the Lions defense was hurt and they didn't have all their guys. I don't care. It didn't matter if they would have had all their guys. Jaden Daniels took on defenses that had all of their guys, and it was the same thing. He torched them. Jared Goff was making simple mistakes in the postseason. Like that Quan Martin interception after watching quarterback, that's a relatively routine throw. that he just missed in the playoffs.
You know what they also skipped on quarterbacks, that an interception that they skipped?
Where's the Jeremy Chinner interception?
They skipped the Mikey Sanders still interception.
Where's the Mikey Sanders still interception? I mean, I guess they did show Jameson Williams throwing it, but they didn't, I would have liked a little bit more time on Mikey's, he made an incredible acrobatic
It would have
play.
been nice if they showed the two other interceptions that happened in that game.
Especially the Jeremy Chin one. Like, if we're gonna do the emotional thing, like, oh my God, Jared's sad. Oh my God, his wife is sad. Like, if we're gonna play with the emotional heartstrings, like, let's just drive the knife all the way in.
Might as
for
well.
Lions fans, not for us. I loved it.
It was great.
But watching that game and saying, yeah, Jared Goff is totally better than Jaden Daniels makes me want to throw up. Nats back in action tonight. They take on the San Diego Padres. Locked on Nats, one of the best Nats podcasts you can find. Their host, Ryan Clary, is going to jump on with us when we get back. Don't go anywhere. It is the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dent Day, sitting in for Kevin on the Team 980.
All right, here's what's happening on Friday, July 18th. Lloyd Howell is out as the executive director of the NFL Players Association. This resignation comes amid scrutiny regarding a collusion case, as well as Howell's part-time consulting position at the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm approved to seek minority ownership of NFL teams. Meanwhile, TJ Watt has reached a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers to make himself the highest paid quarterback in football. He signed a 3-year extension worth $123 million, and 108 of that is fully guaranteed. Mike Williams is also retiring. He's closing the book on an 8-year NFL career. Williams was looking to make his return to the Chargers roster after a disappointing final 2 seasons. He was working through an injury at Chargers camp, but was placed on the physically unable to perform list before training camp. And Dame Lillard is returning to the Portland Trailblazers after being waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. Dame signs a 3-year, $42 million contract and is set to make $141 million over the next 2 seasons. After almost 2 weeks, baseball is back in the nation's capital. The Nats are returning from the All-Star break tonight to take on the San Diego Padres. Michael Soroka likely to get the start against Dylan Cease. First pitch at 6:45. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 6:15. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
It's the Kevin Sheehan Show. Denton Day sitting in for Kevin here on the team at 980. Chris Russell takes over at 1 p.m. Nats in action tonight. They're at home taking on the San Diego Padres after a couple days off due to the MLB All-Star break. Michael Soroka on the mound for the Nationals. He'll be taking on Dylan Cease for the Padres. Joining us now to preview the second half of the season for the Nationals is the host of the Locked On Nats podcast, Ryan Clary. You also hear him periodically on 106.7 The Fan. Stallion, my friend. I haven't seen you in a while, so I hope you're doing well, but how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Just got off from vacation, so this is actually day one back, and it's Friday. So, kind of a nice day, Denton.
You are a better man than me for coming back after vacation and working a Friday. I would have told the boss, I've been like, Drab, CK, plane got stuck. I don't know what happened. I'm not here.
The plane did. I was actually supposed to be back Wednesday night, but the flight got canceled. And it was a whole fiasco. I had the worst travel 24 hours that I'm sure I'll catch you up in when I see you in a few minutes.
Where did you go?
So I was actually up in Maine, in Waterville, Maine, the past few days. And I was with my girlfriend, and we stayed up there. And, yeah, it was a ton of fun there. Middle of Maine, because kind of in the middle of nowhere. I had so many lobster rolls. It was incredible.
Maine is silly. I went to Maine in October. It's silly. All right, enough about Maine. Nats back in action. Expectations for the second half of the year. It'll obviously look a little different. No Rizzo, no Davey. Are they in tank mode, or were you still expecting some decent amount of wins?
Well, they can't tank at this point then, because they can't pick inside the top 10. But also, I don't really think this team is going to win. I just did a show on this today, actually. And I believe that this team, and really just where they are now, you've got to set yourself up for 2026 and beyond. So I do think there are going to be a lot of losses, a lot of growing pains. But I think with what the Nationals have to do at this point is they are going to have to prioritize the future. And if that means calling up some of your top prospects, whether it be a Yohandy Morales or maybe even a Robert Hassel III to have him have his second stint up in the bigs again, then that's the kind of decisions that you are going to have to make. And quite frankly, I think that they should be making those decisions for the second half this year, because it's not going to be about wins and losses. This team is in the rebuild, and you have a new regime here in town. I think you're going to see a lot of different things, and there'll be some growing pains with that.
MLB draft was this past weekend. Are you a fan of what Washington was able to do? I know a lot of people this time last year wanted the younger Holiday. He is not drafted by Washington. Did you like what the Nats did in their first draft post Mike Rizzo?
I do. I think this was a smart thing that this front office did. Like, people can talk about taking the top player in the draft, but there really was no consensus top player. Like, we could talk about Ethan Holiday or Cade Anderson. And yeah, those guys are very good players, but I think Eli Willis is as high of the ceiling as any of those guys at this point. He's a stud defender. He's really good on the bases. He's going to steal 30-plus bags a season in the minors and hopefully up in the majors also. He's also had some room to improve as far as his power goes as well. So I think it was a pretty sexy pick. I think this is a very nuanced kind of decision that they had to make. But overall, I loved what they did. Because, again, Mike Rizzo, something that he was not able to do was draft and develop. And, again, I think that this new regime here in town, whether it be Mike DeBartolo moving forward or someone else coming outside the organization, I think that they're going to have their hands full with development, and hopefully they will be better. Because, again, if you can develop an Eli Willis and have him pan out to be a top prospect and a superstar kind of player, then you're obviously in a great spot moving forward. So I do like the selection. I do like what they did. They spread the money around. They spread the wealth. And I think that they'll be able to develop more guys here, hopefully with the new regime.
What's the latest with Elijah Green, a guy that I think a lot of people were very hopeful for when they drafted him? And obviously, James Wood has gone on to become a superstar, so everyone is focused on him. But it feels like we haven't heard a lot about Elijah Green.
Well, it's because he's actually in rookie ball right now. And yes, this is his, third full season. And yeah, he got demoted back down to rookie ball. I actually saw that I believe he's going to be making his way up to Fredericksburg this weekend. So I think he will be back in low A. I don't think it's too early. Well, let me just kind of take that back real quick. I'm not sure what to make of him at this point, because as soon as we made that pick, I was like, okay, this guy has a very high ceiling, but Mike Rizzo cannot develop those kind of guys. And unfortunately for Elijah, he was never developed. I mean, we have not seen him perform at any level outside of rookie ball at this point. So, I mean, what do I make of him? If Elijah Green can make it to the majors at this point, I think that would be a success. I've even seen some reports, and it's not even a joke, that there are some college football programs out there recruiting him at this point, which honestly, I don't think that's that crazy. I mean, this guy's a freak athlete. So, I mean, as far as him goes, he's going to be your 20th ranked prospect in your system. If he makes it to the big leagues, good for him. He deserves it. He's really talented, but you're going to have to see a lot more from this guy. And the improvements that he's going to have to make are just pretty jarring at this point, because I don't know if he'll be able to make those.
Ryan Clary is with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. He is the host of the Locked On Nationals podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Ryan Clary 11. So with the second half of the season, as you put it, being used hopefully to get ready for 2026, what do you think that makes the mentality surrounding the trade deadline coming up here again in the first trade deadline in a post Mike Rizzo era?
If I'm Mike DeBartolo at this point, I'm looking at the 26-man roster. I'm going by each name, and I'm going to ask the same question. Are you part of this future? And if you're not, we're going to trade you. I think the Nationals should have moved off Kyle Finnegan this last year's trade deadline. They did not. They decided to keep him. And fortunately enough, they were able to retain him in free agency and bring him back. But he's one of those guys where I look at it and say, hey, you're mid-30s at this point. You're not going to be a big part of this future. Let's trade you and get the value while we can. Nathaniel Lowe is another one. A lot of Nationals fans, they really like him. He's been solid, but I think he's pretty replaceable. I think that he's someone who, you can have a discussion about him being a part of the future, but in my mind, I don't really think he is. I think you can do better, and I think a team at this year's deadline, like let's say the Boston Red Sox, they might look to add a first baseman there. He's solid defensively. We haven't really seen that at this point, but he also has a little bit of power, which we have seen. I think a team will want to call for him, and hopefully DeBartolo can put together a solid package for him, and I'd be trading veteran guys who aren't a part of this future at this point. I think that's what the smart teams do, and I hopefully kind of think Mike DeBartolo will think along those lines.
How many guys are absolute untouchable?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say right now it's Brady House, James Wood, C.J. Abrams, and kind of guys like that at this point. I mean, I mentioned Dylan Cruz also, but one guy you're not going to hear me mention is Mackenzie Gore. Now, I personally would not be selling him. I would not be reaching out to other teams, but I do think teams will reach out about Mackenzie Gore. And if you reach a Godfather level territory for return, why wouldn't you trade him? I mean, he's 2.5 years left to control left. I mean, it's kind of similar to that Juan Soto timeline. And if you can get a bunch of very good elite type of prospects, why wouldn't you trade him at this point then?
That is not a name I thought you were going to mention, but I do think that conversation is fascinating. Is part of the reason why you would be open, again, this assuming that the package is unbelievable, but is part of the reason that you would be open to that because of some of the guys they have in the minors that you are expecting to have a really strong start to their season when or start to their career when they are eventually called up to the majors full time?
I mean, I do think it's part of it. Like Travis Acor is the name that we've all been talking about. He's kind of your one blue chip prospect. I mean, I expect him to be a top 10 prospect entering next season, and not just with the Nationals. He's the number one guy at this point, but I expect him to be a top 10 prospect in baseball surrounding every publication you look at. So yeah, I think that's part of it. But then also right now, if you look around the diamond, what's that one trade and really what's the one move that has kind of kept this team afloat the past few seasons? It's the Juan Soto trade. And if you can get a package, it's not going to be like that. You're not going to get James Wood and all the other guys in that deal. But if it's going to be something similar to that and a team believes that they are just one player away and they think Gore is that one player, I would make that move. And honestly, I think it would be the smart thing to do. But again, I would not just trade him away for the best package out there. It has to reach a Godfather-like level. And quite frankly, you just got to have to kind of look yourself in the mirror and say, in 2.5 years, are we going to re-sign this guy? Likely not. He's a Scott Boras client. He's going to get the most money out there possible. And I just don't believe that it'll be the Nationals to give him that deal at this point. So if you're going to trade him eventually, you might as well do it now when the value is at its highest. He's an all-star. and the guy is an ace, and he's shown that the past few years.
There is nothing that hurts my soul more than finding out that great players are Scott Boras clients.
It's awful.
Just the pit in your stomach that forms after that. You're just like, not again. Here we go again.
I know. Trust me, I get it. But then again, it's like I've come to the realization that we're not going to re-sign Scott Boras clients. And James Wood, unfortunately, is another Scott Boras guy, but we're 6 years from that. So I don't have to think about that at this point. But for me, when it comes to Mackenzie Gore, I'm thinking about that. And if a team calls and they're willing to give up a ton for him, why not?
I'm glad you mentioned James Wood. This will be my final question for you. Ryan Clary with us here on the Kevin Sheehan Show with Dente sitting in for Kevin. James Wood had 24 homers in the first half of the season. You know me. I'm a degenerate. I'm a gambler. If I set the line at 45.5, are you going over under for total homers for James Wood?
That is such a good line. Then I'm gonna go over. I'm going to go over. I'm feeling good after vacation at this point. And I think James Wood is just him, man. Like he is so good. I mean, he is a treat to watch every single day. I think he gets hot in the month of August. You know, baseball, notoriously, they've always juiced the baseballs in the second half of the season. So hopefully they juice some James Wood balls, and I think we'll see a lot of balls go over the yard or over the fence this season. So I'm going to take the over on that. I'm going to say he finishes up with 47 home runs in his first full season. How about that?
That would be crazy. I mean, even if they start losing games, I'd gladly be in attendance to watch them lose like 6-4, but James Wood is just mashing homers on a regular basis.
It'd be incredible.
It'd be great. Stallion, appreciate it as always, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Of course, then. I'll see you soon.
That is Ryan Clary. He's the host of the Locked On Nationals podcast. You can find him on Twitter at RyanClary11. You know, I have not seen James Wood play in person yet. I have not been to a Nationals game since. Yeah, I had to think for a second. I have not been to a Nationals game since he got called up. I was supposed to. I was actually thinking about going tonight, and then the wifey made some plans, so we're not going to go. We're not going to go tonight. But I need to see James Wood play at some point. He is becoming almost a attraction. Feels like a weird word to describe somebody, but he's becoming a must-see player in Major League Baseball, and he plays here. And I mean, you know, we're 6 years away, as Ryan mentioned, from even, I guess, 5 years away from really worrying about it, but 6 years away from potentially losing him because he's a Scott Boras client. So you might as well watch him as often as you can at this point.
You'll be around tomorrow.
I got plans tomorrow too. It's the one weekend I have things to do on both Friday and Saturday. I'm not a social human being at all, and I got
the
one time. You are going to be busy tomorrow. You've held it down today on what is not only your Friday. This is your last day before vacation, and you have a dirty double because you got to deal with Rooster after me.
It's true. It is true. I will be driving down to Florida tomorrow. I'm going to be waking up. I think my plan is to leave here once I finish the second I finish the podcast, so probably around 5. Get home at 5:30, grab some dinner with a buddy of mine, and then go to bed at like 8. Wake up at 4 and hit the road. So I got a fun drive ahead of me tomorrow.
Buc-ee's is calling your name. I assume you're going down 95, so you'll just go right past the Buc-ee's in South Carolina.
If you were at the Buc-ee's in Florence, South Carolina, between the hours of let's call it 10:30 and 12:30, you will probably see me there.
Can you get to South Carolina that quick?
If you leave at 4 in the morning,
knowledge.
yes.
Yeah, if you leave at 4 in the morning, you probably could. Virginia's a long ass state, man.
It feels longer than it is because I've done the math. South Carolina is the longest. North Carolina is the second longest. Virginia is the third. And then Georgia and Florida, you just fly through.
You fly through them. But when I went to, I guess I did a different direction. But a buddy of mine lived in Knoxville. I drive to Tennessee. You're taking the longest part of Virginia. That drive is 7 hours total, and like 5.5 of them are in Virginia. And I'm like, get me out of this godforsaken state.
I'm tired of looking at the mountains.
Like, I just don't want to. I want to look at the Tennessee mountains, not the Virginia mountains. All right. Safe travels, my friend. So you will not be here on Monday. I will be here on Monday. Kevin is back on Tuesday. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we have some sort of movement on the Terry McLaurin contract by the time I'm sitting in this chair on Monday. One can only hope. I'll also be on air tomorrow on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980 from 3 p.m. To 6 p.m. So if you're a weekend listener, I will see you then. If not, I will see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Chris Russell is up next.